Hello. What's up, everybody? Yeah, we're just gonna chill right now. We're gonna watch a spoiler review, and we're gonna watch a breakdown and Easter eggs. Um, so yeah, we're also gonna be smoking on these two cards. I don't have any weed like flower with me, but I'm gonna smoke these two cards. Um, they just sometimes I'll be feeling depressed a little bit, and then sometimes I just feel cool. Fucking A, man. Fuck this OCD, bro. Like, I be having OCD, like, bad. Like, I can't walk in and out of rooms. I can't pick water bottles out of the fridge. I can't put things down. Like, I can't do anything. I feel like. And then, and I just try to be happy. I try to ignore all these negative thoughts and like these just negative things that I just focus on. I just try to ignore those. You know, I try to be happy. You know, and it gets to the point where I'm basically not. And I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm gonna go to Vegas. I wanted to go to Vegas for in June, but you gotta have a specific mindset when you go to Vegas, man. And I don't have that mindset. Um, yeah, just gonna drink. I'm just gonna drink. Mm, Fuck it, let's watch some spoilers, I guess. I'm just. Let's just see if this is cool or not. Seeing in my OCD, man, doesn't let me do shit, bro.
Marvel's The Thunderbolts has now officially been released in Marvel's The Thunderbolts has now officially been released in theaters, and with that, it means it is time to go into full spoilers for this movie. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here for you guys, is giving you my spoiler review for Thunderbolts, talking about some of its best moments, some of the things I thought didn't work as well, also definitely the post-credit scene that really sets us up for Avengers Doomsday, along with everything and anything in between. But it's not just going to be about my opinion. I need you guys also turn that comment section into a discussion. How did you feel about Marvel's Thunderbolts? Is this one of the better Marvel movies post Endgame? As well as your theories on where this takes us in the future of the MCU. Alright, so just kind of jumping into it, again, I found Thunderbolts really refreshing. It brought me back to the old MCU. That's the kind of vibe I got watching Thunderbolts. It just reminded me of a time where this world was really exciting. It was filled with really interesting characters. I loved the group dynamic and how the movie ended up being an allegory for depression. It managed to tie all those themes together while still being able to throw the laughs, action, and everything else you expect from Marvel. I will say I do hate that some people are calling the Thunderbolts a real movie as opposed to some of the other lesser Marvel films that have come out lately. Things like an Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, the Marvels, or maybe even Captain America Brave New World. I wouldn't really say Thunderbolts is finally a real movie. I just think after having a row of disappointments and underwhelming films, this reminded us, oh man, Marvel can still do really cool stuff. So let's just start off with beginning of the movie, working our way down to that post-credits scene. So the opening of the film kind of really took me by surprise. It opens with a monologue from Yelena. We're following her as she carries out a mission for Val to get rid of some evidence of wrongdoing so she doesn't lose her spot in the government circle. But it was really the monologue by Yelena where she's just like,
there's something wrong with me. An emptiness.
There's a void, there's a darkness, I feel sad, and that carries on throughout the rest of the film. You know, we joke around about Thunderbolts being Marvel's The Suicide Squad, and in DC, the Suicide Squad is named that because if they refuse to do the mission they do, they'll end up dead, so it's suicide not to do it, but they're also being sent out on a suicide mission where they'll most likely be killed. Looking at it here, the Thunderbolts could genuinely also be called the Suicide Squad, because every member of the team is actually suicidal. Oh my... Kevin Feige, brilliant! Brilliant! And honestly, that's not even a joke. If you've seen the movie, there are a couple of times, and I've seen the film twice now, where a handful of these characters have moments where they're about to die and they fully accept it and even look at peace with them looking to die. And that was such an interesting, powerful way to go with this movie, even more so with what they did with the Sentry. But not getting too ahead of myself, backing up a little bit before we get to the Sentry, Yelena again is feeling empty to the point that she goes and visits her father, Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. And dude, just anytime Red Guardian is on screen talking, he just eats up the scenery. Every piece of dialogue he had just had me laughing so hard. Like when he thinks it's DoorDash at the door, so he's like, your subordinates will be reported to DoorDash HQ. Good stuff. But essentially through the talk that they have, Red Guardian mentions, you know, the happiest time I felt is when I was Red Guardian, when I was the Captain America for Russia, serving my country and saving my people.
You feel fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so full, so filled.
Your sister, Natasha, knew that, and it's probably why she was an Avenger, to kind of feel fulfilled and like she's putting some good in the world, and Red Guardian suggests, hey, maybe you should do that for yourself. So that's where she agrees and gets sent off on one last mission that Val needs that ends up being a trap where all the members of the Thunderbolts were sent there to kill off one another. And so kind of breaking down that vault scene, just One, the fight sequences between them, really great. I'm not gonna say this was like top 10 best fight scenes in the MCU, but it really did showcase their powers, and I also thought it was effective in what they were good at. But it was also here where we started quickly seeing the dynamic between the team, how dysfunctional they are, but yet they're still able to work together and actually get something done. I think this is where I want to individually talk about each member of the Thunderbolts and what they brought to the table. Starting off with, let's just get it out of the way. Taskmaster. What were they thinking? Heavily advertising Taskmaster, pretending like she was gonna make it to this scene in the movie, because early on in the trailers they did Photoshop her in there, but you could honestly summarize his Taskmaster's appearance as a cameo, because it's less than about 3 to 4 minutes of screen time. She was essentially brought in to kill John Walker, US agent, but Ghost was the one brought in to kill her, and she manages to get the job done and takes a bullet to the head, ending Taskmaster in the MCU. Look, I'll admit, I think they did do Taskmaster a little dirty, but I still think Taskmaster as a character, bro, that's a character you need to give a second chance in the MCU, because that's such a cool power. This muscle memory ability, being able to copy anyone's fight style and whatever weapon they're using, whether it's a sword, a shield, or some gauntlets, that's just such a cool power, and I feel like Marvel just fumbled it. It also, in a weird way, left kind of a sour taste in my mouth for the Ghost character, because I mean, she actually killed her. And, you know, Yelena, having been with Black Widow and knowing the backstory of Taskmaster, there is a part of Yelena that feels a little bad for her. You kind of just killed someone I kind of like. And, like, to make matters worse, there's even a scene where they just scour through her gadgets and body parts and like, oh, she doesn't need this, she doesn't need that. Oh, she would have wanted me to have this. Okay, man. The Taskmaster disrespect in full swing. But I guess jumping off that point to Ghost, she was someone that I just thought was okay in Ant-Man and the Wasp when they were introduced. I was honestly very shocked when it was announced she would be part of the Thunderbolts, but hey, she's like one of the only characters with a unique ability, this phasing power. I love that added comment they made where it's like, oh, I can only do it for like about a minute. And there was even some weapons with a high-pitched sound that kind of ruined her phase shifting. So I always like when they balance out those powers and don't just make them overpowered for no reason. But probably a real standout to me, and something that's gonna lead me to complain big time with what Marvel decided to do with his introduction, John Walker, US agent. Dude is such a lovable a-hole. It's so fascinating seeing the discourse online amongst fans, because I mean, it's almost like a Homelander situation where there's real people who super sympathize with his version of Captain America, and some who think he should still be the real Captain America. And if you still think that after watching Thunderbolts, ooh boy, you just missed a lot of points that went over your head, because they full out address it like, dude, okay, you're trying to do right, you're trying to redeem yourself, but there's no way you can be the real Captain America. You're an a-hole, you got a big ego and anger issues, my guy. Yet, even with all those traits, you can see the glimmer of heart, the glimmer of niceness in him that makes him likable. And so maybe that's what more people are drawn to, is just this nuance of John Walker and how the broken side of him actually makes him more relatable. Because as much as we would all like to think if we got the super soldier serum, we'd be as good as Cap America, most of us would end up a John Walker. Bro, I was even shocked they brought up his whole kill scene from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That is a real debate amongst fans online whether he was justified in murdering that person or whether he was in the wrong of killing someone who was surrendering to him. Because Ghost says, didn't you kill an innocent man in the public? And then John Walker responds with, define innocent. Just literally the fight fans have online with that scene. But they're repeatedly calling him Dime Store Cap America, and he even had a moment where they're trying to like destroy a fuse box where he says, on your left. Bro is stealing them Captain America lines. But I mentioned there's something I want to complain about. John Walker is definitive proof that, man, Marvel, you messed up with giving Sam Wilson Captain America his first movie as this Red Hulk story that turned out to be really empty and kind of just okay for the character. Sam Wilson's first Captain America movie should have been a version of what Falcon and the Winter Soldier was on Disney Plus. That show should have been turned into the first movie and would have really have showcased John Walker into the MCU with a film, because when you really look at the team, he's kind of the only one that comes from a Disney Plus show, while all these other characters made debuts in movies. That's going to be another fumble on Marvel's part, but it's also showing you just how well of a job they did in this movie with kind of giving you tidbits of everyone's backstory without you having to feel like, oh, I didn't watch Black Widow, I didn't watch Ant-Man the Wasp, or I didn't watch those episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier. They did a real good job of just giving you quick lines of dialogue of where they came from, major points in their backstories to how they are now, and not all of it was treated as a gag. Like, it was just genuinely treated as simple information. The last thing I want to gush about with John Walker, which is something I noticed in my second time watching it, after Bob, who we know is the Sentry, and he has these abilities to send a character into the void where they relive their past trauma or things that have made them who they are today, a la what gives them depression now. After we see John Walker's moment of him just not really paying attention to his baby, being focused on losing the Captain America mantle, lashing out on his wife, where we then later find out she left him and took the baby. After that moment is over and they have climbed that mile-long pipe up, there's this subtle thing where John Walker looks back down to that mile-long hole, and it actually looks like he's wanting to jump, like he's wanting to end it right there because of how disgusted he is by his actions from that moment with the baby and his wife. And I was like, oh, these guys really are the Suicide Squad. I don't know. It was things like that in this movie that I felt was really touching and refreshing and brought this movie up a notch from your standard comic book film. Like, even going back to right before the incinerator goes off and the team doesn't know if Ghost is about to open the door or just let them fry because, hey, they just met. They're not friendly or loyal to each other. When the countdown is going down to like 5, 4, and the camera zooms in on Yelena and you just see her close her eyes and accept death.
Get the quilted comfort of Quilted Northern.
Woo! That's some powerful stuff. I love that the movie was able to do that. Now, I am going to get to Bucky Barnes, but let's talk about the Sentry part of all this. Okay, so I like some things about Sentry, and I didn't like some things. So the things I really did like about Sentry is how they used his powers and abilities from the comics to kind of connect all the Thunderbolts and really emphasize this mental allegory of depression. So essentially in the MCU version, we find out that Val has been trying to create her own super soldier, almost her own version of a Superman who could also work as almost like her boy toy where she commands it and nobody's going to tell her otherwise. And because she has this super person, she'll never lose her position and power in the government. Well, it looks like that plan failed and all the test subjects died except for Bob. We learned that he was actually a drug addict with a very traumatic past, had an abusive father, and although they were testing him for the Sentry project, he was never going to end up being the guy if it was successful. He was just going to be a guinea pig. And so the way they kind of explain it is that this superpower ability they gave him, the power of 1,000 exploding suns, as it's described in the comics, along with giving him those powers, the darker, depressed side of him also manifested into its own persona, giving this darker side the ability to make others relive their trauma. I like that part of it, and I'm actually kind of disappointed we didn't get to see little memories of like Bucky or Red Guardian or even Ghost. The only people throughout the movie that got that was Yelena, John Walker, and Val. All really great moments, but man, I would have liked to have seen the others and what their most traumatic thing would have been. So I like that aspect of it. I think it was finally when it was time for him to be in full costume and then become the Sentry, and he kind of turns on his friends just because Val told him to. Like, that felt a little contrived. I'm glad he didn't want to kill them all the way. He's like, hey, they're not a threat to me. I'm not gonna kill them. And it did lead to a really cool action scene where each member of the Thunderbolts are just fighting Sentry, and you get a real idea of just how extremely powerful this guy is. Even if I'll admit in those moments it looked a little too CGI heavy and some of them turned into like PlayStation characters, still a really fun scene. I just feel like the movie could have spent more time instead of kind of rushing through that, because by the end of it, once they save him and they relieve him of his trauma by building a community and being there as friends, great allegory, his mind is just conveniently wiped. He doesn't know what happened or that he has this darker half. And we're good for now. We got to lead into Avengers Doomsday. That's to me where I was like, okay, that's where the Marvel stuff has to kick in, and this movie felt less standalone towards the end. And even just commenting on his costume, I think the costume is fine. Not a big fan of the blonde hair, but I guess they had to do it just because it's comic accurate. I think maybe they'll give the costume a change come the next movie, because Lewis Pullman is officially confirmed to be in Avengers Doomsday, and I do have some theories on how they're going to use his powers in Avengers Doomsday. But now here's where I want to get into the character I was hinting at in my spoiler-free review of someone I thought whose character motivations just were not making sense by the end of this movie. And that's Bucky Barnes. So starting from the top with Bucky, I think it's so interesting, and they even showcase this in Captain America Brave New World, that Bucky is now a member of Congress, that he has a seat in the House, and that he thinks this is the best use of his abilities, is trying to change the system within legally through passing laws and stuff like that, which honestly on paper, I have no problem with that. I think that actually does work, even if it caught me off guard. The first time I was like, Bucky's a congressman. He's murdered a lot of people. Then again, probably a lot of congressmen have. But it ended up working nicely as part of him also feeling unfulfilled like a lot of other members of the Thunderbolts, because he's trying to get stuff done. He's trying to be a member of Congress, but it's just not fitting for him. This is obviously an environment that isn't working in his favor, and it feels like he's not getting much done. I will say, though, I love the hype moment they gave him on the desert freeway where he's saving the Thunderbolts and he's taking down the cars one by one with ease. It feels like sometimes they make the Winter Soldier so OP and very powerful, and other times he's just used to show how much other characters are more powerful. And it usually involves with him trying to hit somebody with his fist and getting stopped like it's nothing. But okay, the part I was mainly talking about, and my mind has kind of slightly changed on that in the second viewing, is come by the end of the film, as we all could have guessed, we find out what the asterisk stands for in Thunderbolts, and that's the New Avengers. And holding off on that title reveal for just a second, Bucky ends up going along with them and actually joins in the Thunderbolts and becomes the new branded Avengers for the current MCU. And that motivation to me just did not make sense by the end of the movie. I felt like it just did not work with who the rest of the Thunderbolts are. The reason I say that is because every member of the Thunderbolts has done something wrong. They've been considered a villain in the past and have had blood on their hands. Obviously the Winter Soldier too, but his excuse is a lot more valid because he was under mind control. He never made those choices. If anything, I think his mind is way more aligned with someone like a Steve Rogers, who wants to do good, wants to do things morally the right way. So when we come to by the end of the movie, and Val is the one responsible for all this, has been doing human testing, getting a lot of people killed, doing shady stuff just so she can stay in power, and she's like, oh no, but I'm gonna make you a legal Avenger now. All right, I'm gonna go with that because I'm Bucky Barnes. That's where that character motivation didn't make sense to me. And there's even more stuff that we'll get into with the post-credit scene, with Bucky deciding to be okay with this, that causes conflict with Sam Wilson. I mentioned I'm kind of forgiving it the second time I watched the movie because I was able to again catch the monologue that Bucky gives to the Thunderbolts when they're all tied up, telling them that, hey, I've kind of been in your position. I've been looked at as the bad guy. The answer is definitely not to run away from this thing. It's to face it head on and try and redeem yourself, which is what I'm doing. So I totally understand him sympathizing and almost seeing eye to eye with these guys, but I feel like the actual Bucky would not take the offer to become a new Avenger and help out his friends. The Bucky we know would be like, sorry, Val, you did wrong. Time to go to jail. And that's that. Obviously, though, the movie couldn't end that way because Val calling them the New Avengers is what sets us up for Avengers Doomsday. So it's a contrived thing we have to go through because it leads us into the next step. It's not a thing that ruins the movie for me, but like I said, I feel like it conflicts with the character a little bit. But okay, now that can segue us into the actual post-credit scene of the movie. So there are two of them. The first one is a joke one, which I'll just use this to actually talk about how I feel about the Thunderbolts name change. We all knew the Thunderbolt asterisk was eventually going to lead to something Avengers related. Like, it's just so obvious. But I thought it would be something more like the Dark Avengers, right? Or West Coast Avengers. Having the title New Avengers, I was like, okay, a little surprised by that. And them even becoming the official Avengers, actually staying in the old Watchtower that Val has taken over. And because of her position in government, they are the official United States Avengers. And well, two things. I've seen a lot of fans complain about this, saying, oh, this Avengers lineup sucks. And other people who say, oh, now the future of the MCU makes sense. Now we know who will be the Avengers we follow for the next couple movies. Y'all ain't paying attention. They make it very clear after they're announced as the New Avengers that the public hates them. We, even the audience, aren't supposed to love the idea that they are the official Avengers now. There's a ton of articles and photos that pop up where they're called the B-Vengers, or is this Avengers a joke? Can they actually save us? Who are these guys? And I think that's something that's gonna play into Avengers Doomsday. It's like, yes, they might be the official Avengers team, but they're not equipped for what we're about to go through in Avengers Doomsday. This mockery of a team is not going to be enough, and they're going to need real heroes to be able to finish the job. So I don't think at the end of the day, when everything's said and done, this is our permanent new Avengers. I think this is just the Avengers in place, setting up our heroes where they need to be, so then other heroes can join them up. I don't think when Secret Wars and Avengers Doomsday is all said and done, this will still be the official team. It's gonna change a lot. But there is a part of me happy for these guys like Red Guardian, who is getting back into that limelight, and he had that great moment where he saved a little girl and then she got freaking blasted away by Sentry. That was a crazy moment. So there's my thoughts on that. But now getting to the actual post-credit scene that happens at the end of this movie that was nice, long, and really gives us a clear picture of how we're going into Avengers Doomsday. So it opens up, it's been 14 months later, they have Avengers logos, new suits, which I'm just gonna say it, I hate Bucky's new suit. I think it's supposed to pay homage to the comics, and the director of Thunderbolts mentioned that he didn't direct that post-credit scene, that it was done by the creative team currently making Avengers Doomsday. So a lot of these suits could end up being the official look for the heroes throughout the movie, and again, Bucky's was the only one I wasn't in love with. Everybody else's suits look fine, and I'm sure they're still working on the Red Guardian. He's not going to wear that NASCAR looking thing. But in this scene, we are again told 14 months later, the public still don't like them as the official Avengers. Walker mentions that there's nasty memes online of people not liking them. I think it's still so hilarious that even 14 months later, his shield is still a taco. How did that never get fixed? Why wouldn't they reissue him a new shield? But whatever. But the really interesting part about this is that they have a conversation that Sam Wilson, our current Captain America, is not happy about them being the official Avengers, using the name Avengers, to the point that Sam Wilson has even copyrighted the name so they can't use it. They even made it sound like Sam is putting together his own team. That's again also where I was shocked, where Bucky mentions he tried talking to Sam, trying to figure out some sort of compromise.
Watch both
but
of
that
their
talk
teams
did not
come
go
together,
well, and now
and that's gonna
they're
be
not
the
on good
Avengers.
speaking terms. I'm like,
Watch that.
what? These
Watch
guys are
freaking
supposed to be
Sam's
bros,
team
and
and
off screen
Bucky's
they just
team
had a
go
big
together
fight
and
that
boom,
cost them their
that's
friendship.
the
Again,
Avengers.
doesn't feel like Bucky would go
Like, I
that
guarantee
much out
you
of his
that's
way
what's
for
gonna
these
happen,
new
man.
group of people. When Sam is like the guy
Guaranteed
Steve
coming up.
Rogers chose to continue the Shield, Bucky, shouldn't you be following in his footsteps? But whatever, it's probably going to lead to some awesome dynamic and scenes in Avengers Doomsday. And maybe this is me stretching things a bit, but I feel like it'd totally be possible, since they actually mentioned that there's a legal battle now for the name Avengers. Is this how they then throw in Charlie Cox Daredevil into the movie? Why not? But I think the obvious thing that's going to happen is when Doomsday starts occurring and trouble is afoot, the Thunderbolts' new Avengers are then going to have to team up with whoever Sam Wilson has put together. And I can think of a few names, especially based off the casting chairs that were revealed for Doomsday. Well, I think that's going to include Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Paul Rudd, Latita Wright as Black Panther, because Wakanda does make Sam Wilson's suit, so obviously they would be on his team. Danny Ramirez is Falcon, Shang-Chi, just based on the official names that we know are part of the movie. Those, I think, are some of the members that'll be part of the Sam Wilson team, and they'll have to drop whatever feud they have to team up and fight this threat, which, speaking of the threat...
Speaking of the threat, pop that mean.
It's time.
It's on the pop that. I'm just kidding.
Oh, what a freaking hype moment, man. I had
know,
not
that
been
made
that
me
excited
hype.
about
That's
post-credit
what
scene
made me
in a
hype,
very
too.
long time. And if you saw my spoiler review for Captain America Brave New World, you know how much I hated the post-credit scene of that movie and how dumb it was. This right here, buddy, oh boy, is a post-credit scene that gives me the chills and has me looking forward to what's next. So again, we see Yelena and Bucky mention that there is some sort of space threat, so they pull up a satellite image of something entering the atmosphere, and lo and behold, it's actually the spaceship for the Fantastic Four. I will admit this kind of now gives away the ending for the Fantastic Four, but there are still some unanswered questions. We all figured that would be happening, that the Fantastic Four would find some way to go from their world to ours, because again, the Fantastic Four we're about to see are in the multiverse. They're in their own universe. And so are they coming to Earth because their planet blew up like it's being teased in the trailer and Galactus got to them? Or did they save the day and are aware that Galactus or some other threat like Doom is on their way to this Earth and they're coming here just to warn us and help us. I'm thinking it's gonna be the latter, and so we all kind of figured though the movie would end that way, but the question is still up in the air whether their planet got destroyed or it's okay. The only other theories I have now about what could happen is how they're gonna end up using Sentry in Avengers Doomsday, because it does end with saying that the new Avengers and Bob will return, and you get a small moment with Bob in the post-credit scene where he says, yeah, sorry, I can't be much help. If I did, the other guy would come out, meaning the void, the darkness. So they kind of just have Bob there as a last resort where, hey, if he's really needed, he'll come out, but there is a risk that the void comes out again. There's either two things they end up doing with Sentry. One, he's just used as cannon fodder to show how strong Doctor Doom or whatever other villain there is. Because again, they just showcased us that Sentry is Superman level powerful. The guy is untouchable, super strong. And if you throw someone that strong up against Doctor Doom and Doctor Doom kills him right away, well then that just establishes to the audience, hey, that guy you thought was super strong, this guy's even stronger. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Thanos when he fought the Hulk, and Thanos won. But two, and what I think they should do, and if they don't, it's a real missed opportunity, I think using the Void's powers of being able to see someone's backstory / trauma is probably how we'll get our answer of the backstory involved with Robert Downey Jr.'s Victor Von Doom. That's where I could see the Sentry actually being used in a way that would make sense for the movie, is that maybe they send Sentry after Doctor Doom, he has a tussle with him, and we get a moment where Sentry is able to put him in the void, and that reveals us the backstory to this specific version of Doctor Doom, possibly revealing like when his face got scarred and had to put on the mask, or his motivation for being evil and wanting to take over the multiverse. There's fan theories out there that this version of Doctor Doom is actually going to steal the face from a Tony Stark out there, and that's why he looks like Robert Downey Jr. So we could get that intel. So that's how I see them using the void as an actual storytelling method in Avengers Doomsday. But my biggest fear is that they just use him to showcase how strong Doctor Doom is and they kill Sentry right away, which would be a waste because Lewis Pullman was really great in the role. All in all, very happy with the Thunderbolts. Finally puts me on a path where I'm excited to see what's next. I cannot wait for these new Avengers to interact with Sam Wilson's Avenger team, with the Fantastic Four, and this ensemble cast is already looking so exciting for Avengers Doomsday. And I really wasn't able to say I was that thrilled and excited after like something like Brave New World. This is what I throw out to you guys though. What did you think about the Thunderbolts? Your thoughts and theories? Anything else? Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.
The revolution is finally here, a technological revolution that is transforming our world. Because while the mainstream media is caught up in all the hype around artificial intelligence, they're missing the real story, the story of the parallel processing revolution. This is a technological breakthrough of such immensity that it could rival the invention of the printing press, the steam engine, or even personal computers. And in this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on what will be the defining technology of the 21st century. I'll also give you the #1 stock to buy if you want to capitalize on this multi-trillion-dollar technological revolution before it's too late. And no, this isn't about AI. It's not about quantum computing, not about augmented reality or the blockchain or anything else you're probably thinking of. This is far bigger than all of those technologies. In fact, this is the cornerstone that all
Now we better watch. Now we better watch this. He basically gives us a review and like tells us what happens. But we're gonna do this shit right.
Breakdown of everything you missed in Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts. As my favorite Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame, I've now seen it. Welcome back to New Rockstars.
I've now seen it 15 fucking times.
Everything you missed in Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts.
Marvel movie since Avengers Endgame. I've now seen it 4 times, and I've combed through every scene and found so many interesting details, Easter eggs, connections, and visual themes that collectively make this movie really great. And I am pumped to share with you what I found. And while I'm so grateful that you watch these New Rockstars videos, really the best way to support what we do here is to grab something from our merch store, nerdriot.shop, like one of our Thunderbolts designs. The opening Marvel Studios title card jumps right into the flashing comic book images on the surfaces of the rotating Marvel letters as as usual, but quickly they are overtaken by Shadow, which also silences the sounds of Michael Giacchino's Marvel Studios theme until we're left in silence with a monochromatic dark version of the studio logo, visually foreshadowing the threat the Void will inflict in this story. But before we even get to that, if you look closely, the flashing comic images that we see that typically show Captain America, Iron Man, and others now show only Sentry Comics from a number of issues since its comic debut in 2000. There's the short-haired Ryan Topper Sentry from the recent Jason Liu series, which ended in May 2024. I think actually this is the most recently published Sentry Comics released by Marvel Comics by the time this film was released. There's the retro Golden Age design of Sentry from the 2009 The Age of Sentry run by Jeff Parker and Paul Tobin, which explores Sentry in an alternate universe. There's this image of one of the times Bob Reynolds' Sentry battles the Void, and most of the other images show the best-known Bob Reynolds version of Sentry from the past 25 years. And we see the bottom of this page from 2006's Sentry number 5 by Paul Jenkins, art by John Romita Jr., the panel where Dr. Worth tells Robert, "You're not going to shoot me, Robert. You're not going to hurt anyone because secretly you want to do good. Give me the gun." And then Bob rips himself into a Sentry and Void form as he screams, "You're tearing me apart!" So Sentry was created in September 2000 by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee, who wanted to create Marvel's Superman, but not in terms of values, rather just power set. And they chose to introduce him in an interesting way as a
Train to become a mechanic at Universal Technical Institute, where you can prep for an in-demand career as an auto or diesel technician.
There's all sorts of different new things now, different ways of testing.
as a man struggling with addiction and mental health who didn't even realize he had superpowers. Rick Veitch, who co-developed the character, had the idea to market his introduction as a meta figure who had supposedly been part of Marvel's comics history from the beginning, from the 1940s Golden Age, and then existed in all the eras through the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Silver Age. Due to some cataclysmic event, everyone in the universe forgot about Sentry's existence, including Bob himself. So he suddenly flashes back to memories of being a superhero named Sentry who had taken a super soldier serum 1,000 times more potent than the one given to Steve Rogers that gave him the power of 1 million exploding suns. He could manipulate reality, use telepathy, fly, go toe-to-toe with pretty much every Marvel character, including Hulk, Galactus's Herald Terrax, Doctor Doom. Spider-Man recalls that Sentry fought Galactus to a stalemate, and then most famously, he rips Ares in half. Sentry also shares his consciousness with a dark malevolent entity called the Void. So this movie, reinserting Sentry's comics history in place of the normal comic images on the studio logo, is a reference to this in-universe retcon that happened in the comics. The idea in the comics is that Sentry is supposed to have existed in our universe since the beginning. It's not that his watchtower gets built on top of Avengers Tower, it's the opposite. Avengers Tower got constructed over the site the watchtower was, and just no one knew it was there. And I just like that the opening seconds of the movie pay tribute to the way Sentry was introduced in the comics. Now, the Void has a similar, supposedly ancient origin, speculated to be a separate entity that then latched on to Bob when he became Sentry, with roots maybe as far back as the Old Testament, like part of the plagues of Egypt. But part of Bob's struggle with the Void is that he's never quite sure if the Void is really just a symptom of his own shame or not. This movie asks the question, does that darkness we all feel come from someplace real outside of ourselves? Something that was always there before we were broken enough to feel it, making it like a cosmic shadow demon that we have to fear? Or is it an inner pain that comes from our own experiences, something we all create together, and therefore something we can unite around to get through together? And that Void is actually where we open with Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, who returns from the 2021 Black Widow film and the Disney Plus Hawkeye series, still mourning her sister figure, Natasha Romanoff, and now working in special ops for Val. We see her tight in close-up as she closes her eyes, meditating, as her voiceover says, "There's something wrong with me, an emptiness. I thought it started when my sister died. Now it feels like something bigger, just a void." So right away, Yelena references the void that she will be battling in this movie, and she even questions whether it was caused by her grief over Natasha or if it was something bigger that was always there. Yelena sits atop the second tallest building in the world, Merdeka 118 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. They actually had Florence Pugh on top of this building and had her leap off the edge with support wires, but they did swap in a stunt performer for the parachute base jump. This shot of Yelena taking this kind of leap is significant in a lot of ways. It underscores the dark thought spiral Yelena is going through, because at first, if you haven't seen the trailer, you don't know why she's jumping off a building or if she even has a parachute. Also, it recalls Natasha's deadly leap from the cliff on Vormir in Avengers Endgame, and it puts puts Florence Pugh through a real practical jump that she actually did. And it feels like a bit of redemption for the character, considering the most maligned moment for many people of Black Widow was a very VFX shot of her doing a very cringy jump. This jump is awesome. Yelena lands atop another building and takes down a guard in an Ox hat, OXE. This is the logo of Val's holding company, Ox Group. OXE was mentioned in recent comics. 2023's Thunderbolts Volume 5 Number 1 has a secretive group founded by a version of Valentina Allegra de Fontaine that gives Bucky intel that he brings to Val to form a new Thunderbolts team. Beyond that, there's no real history to OXE in the comics, and the company might have just been created for this movie. It seems to be taking the place of Oscorp, the weapons company of Norman Osborn, who plays Val's role as a director of the Thunderbolts in the Dark Reign era of the comics, which started around 2009, which then leads to Dark Avengers. Norman Osborn and Oscorp, of course, are Sony properties as they're in the Spider-Man orbit. Yelena fights her way through this building as director Jake Schreier stays in a smooth overhead long take, showing Yelena gracefully and deadly moving down this hall, creating a stunning visual of long shadows, which is another visual foreshadowing of the Void, how it flattens victims into long shadows just like this. This whole movie, whether or not Yelena realizes it, she is fighting her own Void. Among Yelena's moves is the firing of her electrified Widow's Bite, the wrist projectile she inherited from Black Widow Natasha, and something we saw her use in Hawkeye. Now, the music we are hearing in this sequence and throughout the film was composed by Sun Lux, the amazing band and composer group who composed the score for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And it just plays so well against a group of characters who are going through a similar journey of being sucked into their own personal everything bagels. We realize that Yelena's opening narration is actually her talking to a bound guard from the Ox Group in this lab as she tries to access this intersection with tubes of serum that she needs to destroy under orders from Val. Our colleague Matt Pat, formerly of Game Theorist and Film Theorist, who I actually met at the Thunderbolts premiere, tweeted that this taped guard might have been him, but he was joking. This actor is credited as Matt Einhorn. He does share the first
こんにちは、千秋と言います。第13区高等学校の学生です。
13th high school, goddamn, bro. You old.
The first name, though, get Matt Pat in the MCU. He was great in Five Nights at Freddy's. Yelena finds a guinea pig in this maze, and I wonder if this guinea pig might have been given any versions of the serum Bob received. The maze that the guinea pig has to navigate mirrors the maze of shame rooms that they will have to navigate to the center of Bob's mind in the final act. Now, in the background on the far end of this room are the two frozen shadows of the first Ox Group techs that Bob/Sentry voided. They're just still there, floating behind Yelena in a lot of these opening shots. And I like how she's just so dead inside and so focused on the mission that she doesn't even comment on the spooky shit that clearly went down here. But it tells us that Bob and Project Sentry were a recent breakthrough. And now that we've seen the movie, do these two guys ever get unvoided when the crisis gets resolved at the end of the movie? Do they wake up on a floor that's been blown up by Yelena? Does Val's goon Holt wake up unvoided on a crashed helicopter? Or in the midair spot the moment he was voided? We're getting to some unblip logic here. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Mother's Day comes around every May like clockwork. For some of us, that's no problem. But for any of you who might have a more fraught relationship with your mothers, but this scientist with a gun explains that Val doesn't understand what happened here, that Project Sentry could bring about the end of the world. This scientist gets his face shot off in the struggle, and Yelena walks off with a guinea pig as the floor this lab was on explodes. And according to behind the scenes material, this movie's production actually set off practical charges for this shot.
We shot Florence jumping off of that building in the morning and then went to another street and just blew up an entire floor of a building in the afternoon.
We move on to Washington, D.C., where if you look closely, you can see the Capitol building and the Washington Monument has scaffolding around it to repair some damage, which is a fun little detail referencing the recent Red Hulk battle in Captain America Brave New World, which included Red Hulk leaping after Sam Wilson from the White House and scraping part of the Washington Monument. Poor Washington Monument. Between this and Spider-Man Homecoming, it's just had a rough go, but I'm sure MJ would say it's because of this.
I don't really want to celebrate something that was built by slaves.
Bucky Barnes is now an elected congressman. Now, in Captain America Brave New World, he mentioned having a fundraiser to go to, and we found out that he was a newly elected congressman. Here, reporters talked to him about the day's hearing, and he mentions his constituents in Brooklyn. Bucky and Steve grew up in Brooklyn. Depending on how the districts are divided in the MCU, Bucky could be representing the 8th district, which in our reality is Hakeem Jeffries' district, the House Minority Leader. Really, all the Brooklyn districts lean heavily Democratic, and I would just be curious to know what kind of campaign Bucky ran. Because unlike Senate seats, which can be appointed by a state's governor, House seats are left empty until a general election or a special election happens to fill them. So Bucky definitely won an election. He could have run uncontested, but people had to mark his name on a ballot. And I just think that's awesome.
Solid B+.
Because Bucky has never given any indication, as recently as the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that he would ever want to seek public office. But since the Sokovia Accords have been repealed according to episode 8 of She-Hulk, and of course since Bucky Barnes is a veteran who fought alongside the Avengers in the Battle of Earth, I'm assuming there were some local leaders in Bucky's hometown neighborhood who urged him to run. Actor Wendell Pierce, who will also play Daily Planet editor Perry White in DC Studios' Superman this summer, plays in this movie Congressman Gary, the chairman on this hearing on articles of impeachment against Val, who we learn in Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the director of the CIA in the MCU. Val corrects Congressman Gary on the pronunciation of her name. It's not Fontaine, but DeFontaine, and mentions the Secretary of Defense as Anderson. So keeping track, the U.S. Secretary of State in the MCU is played by Toby Ziegler actor Richard Schiff, and the Secretary of Defense is this guy, Anderson. And we have two ex-presidents that we know of, Thaddeus Ross, Harrison Ford, and recently James Ritson, played by Dermot Mulroney. Val's signature hair stripe color is now silver, and she wears a white suit, white being the historic suffragette color worn by modern-day feminist politicians. Many have pointed out the visual similarity between her look and Tulsi Gabbard during her confirmation hearings in early 2025, but this scene was shot well before Gabbard was nominated to be part of Trump's administration, or before anyone knew how the 2024 election was going to play out. Gary says that before serving as the CIA director, Val chaired Ox Group, which answers some questions about why she recruited John Walker in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and recruited Yelena as a Black Widow, but it does have us wondering about her marriage with Everett Ross, who's been part of the CIA. Like, was it a CIA connection? Did he know what group she was involved with? Did he know? Val testifies, right now there are several rogue nations with technologies that exceed our own. She's likely referring to Wakanda and potentially also Talokan, because in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, she was definitely after the vibranium tech of those two kingdoms. Val also says, and you'll recall that our last president turned into a bright red superhuman monster who nearly destroyed the city. Of course, referring to the events of Captain America Brave New World, when President Thaddeus Ross turned into the Red Hulk after years of manipulated blood treatments at the hands of Samuel Stearns, the leader. Val says the Avengers are not walking through that door, which Bucky reacts to as he literally just walked through this door. He too is going to have a personal arc in this movie to formally step into the role of becoming an Avenger. Val says, the onus is on me, on us, the American government, to shield its citizens. And she emphasizes the word shield, I think, to also imply that there once was a government organization called SHIELD that aimed to do exactly this. But since SHIELD fell due to Hydra corruption and Captain America the Winter Soldier, there really has been no government agency doing quite that function on the ground on this planet. Val says she doesn't mind at all that Congress pokes around Ox and awkwardly sips her water, and cut to shit as Val and her assistant Mel, Geraldine Viswanathan, rush to clear out the Ox facility. Val tells Mel, get rid of any hanging chads that could get me impeached or land me in prison. The hanging chads is a reference to the 2000 presidential election and recount in Florida, where hanging chads became a media buzz term as the punched out pieces of ballots that were alleged to result in counting errors that assigned some votes for Al Gore to Pat Buchanan and ended up giving George W. Bush the state that tipped the election. Red Guardian Alexei Shostakov, David Harbour, watches on TV footage an old Soviet parade. I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I actually figured out exactly what footage they used for this. It was a May 1st, 1981 Labor Day parade, or May Day parade, in Moscow's Red Square, and that's Prime Minister Leonid Brezhnev Alexei is waving behind. They inserted a young, thinner Red Guardian in this actual historical footage, Forrest Gump style, and I love it. Alexei mutters, Brezhnev, get out of my way. Now, I recapped all of these characters and their numerous past MCU appearances in this recap video, but we last saw
Hey there, my web crafting wizards. In today's episode, I want to show you a cool new way you can make some extra money as a designer or a developer. So as you know, this channel focuses on no-code tools like Wix Studio, and they recently introduced a new way where you get to create a website, and this
saw Red Guardian in the Black Widow film, where we learned he was a Soviet counterpart to Captain America in the 1980s, who then became a spy in the 1990s as part of a fake family living in Ohio with Melina, Natasha, and Yelena. And when they were exposed, they had to flee to Cuba, where the family was split up. Natasha and Yelena went to the Red Room training under Ivan Dreykov, and Alexei, years later, actually ended up in prison in Siberia until adult Natasha and Yelena busted him out.
Move your ass, super soldier.
And after helping them bring down the floating Red Room base, he now, several years later, works for a limousine driving service in the DC area, or really on the border of Baltimore. Yelena passes that red limo and reads the slogan, Red Guardian Limo Service, protecting you from boring evening. And after thinking Yelena is a pushy DoorDash delivery person, he invites her in. And in Alexei's dumpy home, we can actually see a poster labeled Red Guardian in Cyrillic letters behind him in the doorway. We see various posters for motorcycles, which just sets up his love of Bucky's entrance later.
It's a winter soldier.
soldier.
That guy is so cool.
We see various pro-Russia art pieces on the refrigerator. We see past due bills, and we just see old Red Guardian propaganda prints, like one behind Yelena of him using a hammer to break a chain on an anvil, which is just some classic Soviet imagery. And then we see another poster of Red Guardian posed with a woman who we never really get identified, but it kind of looks like some media event or movie or video game that they were trying to promote. Alexei says he moved to DC, and Yelena asks if this is technically Baltimore. He says that Baltimore starts one block over. Hey, Alexei lives in the same city as Isaiah Bradley, and I think they should hang out. They'd get along great. Alexei observes that the light inside Yelena is dim, even by Eastern European standards. And Yelena says she feels lost and empty, but Alexei tells her that her sister Natasha understood that meant to pursue a higher calling. Yelena finds a framed photo of her youth soccer team, the Chesapeake Valley Thunderbolts, which is where they will get the team name of Thunderbolts in this movie. Apparently, this team lost every game, and we learned that there was one girl who pooped in the middle of the game. Actually, director Jake Schreier said that they really wanted to shoot that as the jokey post-credit scene as a handheld video that was shot by Alexei from the bleachers, but they realized that since it would have been in the early 90s in Ohio, Alexei would have just been using his really well-developed American accent, and it would have just sounded like David Harbour and wouldn't have been as funny when he yelled. Yelena calls Val about a more public-facing assignment, and Val gives her one last covert job: stop Ava Starr, Ghost, Hannah John Kamen, from robbing the Ox Vault buried a mile deep in the desert in Utah. Since we last saw Ava Starr in Ant-Man the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne gave her the quantum healing particles, healing her chaotic phase shifting so that she now has greater control over it and doesn't have to live in Bill Foster's energy chambers that keep her from disintegrating. Inside this base, Yelena finds a bunch of crates dragged out into this incinerator floor, including some paperwork on Project Sentry. We see 2 pages on the right showing various alternatives of the Sentry S logo. On the right, we see 12 blank heads with different haircuts, and above that, 12 heads with different colors of hair beneath a bar graph displaying various focus group testing survey results, as Val and her team have clearly been workshopping the best look for a perfect Avenger hero. On the left, we see yellow wardrobe designs of the costume that they'll settle on for Sentry, and over on the dark blueprint, we see the words The Watchtower, which in the comics is Sentry's headquarters, and in this movie, the name of the building Val was planning on renovating Avengers Tower into. Before Yelena can read these, she's shot at by John Walker, Wyatt Russell. They fight, and John throws Yelena pretty far because he did take the super soldier serum in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. While he did have to give up the Captain America shield, he has since acquired a new shield, which you can see is super scratched up, implying a number of vicious missions since we last saw him. Taskmaster, Antonia Dreykov, played by Olga Kurylenko, attacks John, and Ava attacks Antonia. So we get a full circle of 4 targets trying to kill each other, like, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander. And it's pretty clever how Val structured it so that each killer would be most effective over their target's weakness. Like Ghost targets Taskmaster because although Taskmaster can replicate any attack move, Ghost would be able to phase through any surface and try to surprise her. Taskmaster is aimed at John because while John is juiced up with super soldier serum, if he were to face someone with parallel combat moves, he probably would get easily confused and flustered. John targets Yelena because Yelena is smallest and likely most vulnerable to John's relentless strength, and Yelena targets Ghost because while Ghost can phase shift, Yelena is most subtle and agile and probably has the best chance catching her before she would phase. Olga gets
What's up?
Gets one line as Taskmaster in this movie. When she strikes John, she retracts her mask to tell Yelena, I'm not here for you. Ghost phases into the fight and phases through John's body to punch Taskmaster. Yelena fires her Widow's Bite at Ghost, but Ghost phases away so that the probe zips right through where she once stood and hits John behind her. Yelena pounces on Ghost, but Ghost fades away from under her, so Yelena just hits the ground. This is all just really fun to see, this scramble. And the fight bumps into a crate containing what we later learn is Bob, activating it to open. I think one of my favorite moves from this fight shows the exact target chain in a single shot following a knife. Yelena flings the knife at Ghost. Ghost lets a knife go through where she once stood, but then phases back in to catch it behind her, then flings that knife at Taskmaster, who deflects it off of her shield directly at John, who catches it, and then stabs the knife back down at Yelena, who can only hold him off by using the Widow's Bite to
I didn't even realize that shit, bro. What the fuck?
And I love how you can see
Oh, heck nah, bro. I didn't even realize that shit when I watched that.
And phases to Antonia's blind spot, and blam, R.I.P. Taskmaster. You can see a single trickle of blood going down her mask. This is why trailers of this movie hardly show Taskmaster, aside from a very clearly VFX shot of the group in Avengers Tower with Taskmaster painted in, that they didn't even bother to paint in for later trailers that they released. So Bob, Lewis Pullman, who also played the pilot Bob in Top Gun Maverick, stumbles out from behind a crate vomiting. He introduces himself.
Who are you?
I'm Bob.
Bob can't remember how he got in here and seems to have a completely wiped memory, similar to how we first meet Bob Reynolds as having memory issues in the comics. We cut from this scene to a charity event for the First Responders Family Fund, hosted by Val, themed around the Avengers from the Battle of New York. We see banners reading, "Honoring Our Heroes," with Iron Man in his Mark 7 armor from that battle, and Captain America Steve Rogers, and I think Hawkeye, and probably the other 3 Avengers who were part of that. And we see on display Loki's scepter, which would no longer contain the Mind Stone, and was recovered from Hydra after Von Strucker extracted the stone, and the Avengers did recover it in that opening battle from Age of Ultron. We also see some Chitauri guns, and Val also shows off a pair of Chitauri handcuffs, which she says came with the new property, meaning these were also left behind when Happy Hogan supposedly moved everything out of the tower in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, he got Thor's magic belt, but did not get the Chitauri handcuffs. Now, I thought these might be the cuffs that Loki was locked into when he was arrested at the end of the 2012 Avengers movie, and when we revisited this scene in Avengers Endgame and in the Loki pilot episode. We can also see the big broken A from the word Stark when the tower was first Stark Tower, the A that was left standing at the end of that battle to inspire the tower to become Avengers Tower. Congressman Bucky chats with Mel facing that big A, and they talk about Kierkegaard, how the Danish philosopher said that life can only be understood backwards, which is true. And the full quote is, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." And it applies to what these characters will have to face going through their personal voids, facing their past shame and their dark memories by looking back upon them. Bucky proves that he does read Kierkegaard, saying he did believe it was up to individuals to create values. Back in the vault, Bob tries to run out the door, but the blast door slams down. Director Jake Schreier directed the series Beef on Netflix, and I'm reminded of the horrifying
I recently watched that show too.
That we saw in that finale.
The ending of that show is fucking like weird. Oh!
As they try to figure out who Bob is, John gets quickly annoyed at how many times Bob says Bob, and actually if you notice from this point on, John ends pretty much every line he says to Bob with Bob or Bobby. Like,
I forget
stop
that
asking
happened
so many
too.
questions, Bob. And he ends up saying Bob or Bobby way more than Bob ever says his own name in this movie. John calls Ava a SHIELD reject on the run from 15 nations. Yes, after the quantum tech accident that killed her father, Elias Starr, Ava Starr was taken in by Bill Foster and made a SHIELD operative before she went rogue. John describes Taskmaster as having destroyed half of Budapest, and Yelena says, "Don't talk about that one." Yelena says this out of respect for a former fellow Widow agent who was stuck under mind control from Ivan Dreykov, but talking about anything in Budapest in the MCU kind of reminds us of this line in 2012's Avengers.
Just like Budapest all over again.
You and I remember Budapest very differently.
John claims he was the official Captain America, and Yelena's like, "Yeah," for 2 seconds, and Ava reminds us how he publicly killed an innocent man in the street, and John replies, "Define innocent." They're referring to the Flag Smasher who, in episode 4 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, killed John's friend, Lamar Hoskins, after which John crushed him to death with the Captain America shield, smearing it with the guy's blood, and that led to John getting dishonorably discharged and recruited by Val. John also says he has a loving wife and son, referring to his wife Olivia, whom we did meet in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but, John's shame memory later reveals that he is definitely not in a loving situation with his wife. The red lights turn on as the incinerator warms up, and they look for the power source of the frequency device that traps Ghost in this room, and they pry open the panel to defuse it, and John barges in with a shield saying, "On your left," showing that the favorite salute between the other Caps, Steve and Sam, is something that John has fanboyed out over as well.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
On your left.
Come on.
On your left.
Ava gets the door open at the last second, and jumping out to avoid the fire, Yelena ends up touching Bob's hand, taking her into the void for this shame memory. Violet McGraw returns to the 2021 Black Widow film as a young Yelena, a few years into her Red Room training, in some kind of test to lure out another trainee, Anya, into the snowy woods during lunchtime, and then this man comes out to shoot Anya. To be honest, I'm not really sure what the lesson was here. Don't go wandering off, or if a fellow widow gets lost, leave her behind, don't go looking for her, or is it just being in the Red Room's terrible? But the book that Anya drops reads this.
They recasted.
Which refers to the snow maiden of Russian folklore, the granddaughter and helper of Ded Moroz, the Russian Santa Claus, or Father Frost. The snow maiden began as a Novi god character from Russian fairy tales, one about a peasant couple with no children, and then one day a snow sculpture miraculously came to life to become their adopted daughter, and Snigorushka brought so much joy to her parents, but didn't live long because she was challenged by the village children to jump over a bonfire, and she melted. Earlier in this film, Yelena dismissed fairy tales to Alexei Alexei, maybe because she feels like the Snigurushka who melted before she could bring any real joy to anyone. Or maybe this reflects how she chose to be the goalie of the Thunderbolts soccer team, the kind of sacrificial figure who jumps on the grenade. I also enjoy how this movie sort of makes Alexei the Russian Santa Claus, dressed in red and white, with a big old beard, driving a kind of sleigh, who is even called Santa by Val later in the movie.
Who is this old Santa?
Val's plan is to use a strike team to take out Yelena and the rest, and it's overheard by her limo driver, Alexei, who will from here on out spend the next several hours in a very long road trip out west to Utah. Thank God he's a slob with junk food everywhere because he's gonna need that big gulp cup. John slams Bob against the wall, and for a moment, Bob's eyes glow a pale gray as the void begins to peek out. I like this detail because while the void is mostly marked by shadow, the void's eyes do emit a pale gray glow. Yelena encourages Bob, who wants to stay put even if it means his death, and she says she gets hating herself, but after a while that darkness becomes alluring and becomes, and Bob finishes, a void. And Yelena says what she does with that void is to shove it way down. Bucky reads Congressman Gary's packet, spilling a chili dog on it and on his arm. Why does Bucky eat chili dogs? I think he's remembering his great times at Coney Island with his buddy Skinny Steve, and how they probably puked out chili dogs while riding the Cyclone roller coaster. But he washes his vibranium arm in the dishwasher. Yes, he somehow got it back after Rocket and Nebula had it in the Guardians Holiday Special, and then he pops the vibranium arm back and rotates it, similar to what he does when he has to put it back on in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier after the Dora Milaje 5-point finger palm took it off. Mel calls and remembers being in high school when the Battle of New York happened. Bucky says he was like 90, and there's that age again for never aging superheroes.
Disney brought him back. They're gonna make him do this till he's 90.
Mel tells Bucky to track his phone, which I think this scene establishes to show how Bucky knows to go to the Utah desert and how he knows to drive them back to Avengers Tower in New York City. The crew gets into the elevator shaft and John tries to leap up, but
they're coming straight in. Trust
Fuck this, fuck this shit.
Nothing.
Nothing.
For a moment, he disappears into that inky darkness, and I think it's another visual example of a character just going into a void shadow. They ask Ava if she can phase shift up the walls, but she says she needs to know where she's going and can only hold it for a minute. And it's similar to the logic Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler gave when they were trapped in a base in X2.
I have to be able to see where I'm going. Otherwise, I could wind up inside a wall.
Isn't it great that we're gonna get that guy back in Avengers Doomsday? Bob proposes they inch up the shaft, back to back to back to back, and from above and below, they form the shape of an asterisk, which is just fun. Remember, Val said that this vault was a mile down, so that's gonna be a long way to inch back up. Probably about as long as it's gonna take Alexei to drive out to Utah. Mel shares with Val Bob's personnel records, and on this screen, you can actually see some interesting details. Reynolds, Robert, biography, earliest available hospital records indicate Robert Bob Reynolds was a victim of domestic abuse throughout his childhood. There are no records of criminal charges filed in relation to these reports. Following a car accident, Reynolds was addicted to orally administered morphine during middle school, but was able to finish 8th grade before ultimately dropping out less than a year into high school. He has a history of drug-related arrests for nonviolent crimes, including breaking and entering, larceny, and burglary. And it lists his hometown as Sarasota Springs, Florida, and we see Bob's mugshot from when he would have been a teenager. I don't know many people from Sarasota Springs, but I can tell you, a lot of people are addicted to meth. The crew realizes they have no good way to get from their current position to the upper level. Bob mutters to himself, always making things worse. This, we will later see, is what his mom would say to him when he would try to intervene when the dad was abusing her. John snatches Yelena's baton and makes an executive decision, pushing off, dooming all of them to die, but Yelena instinctively latches her cable to Bob, who sneezes. When Bob and John touch hands, John is taken to his shame memory, a scene that really struck me as a parent who has occasionally found myself doom scrolling while I was with my kid. John reads an article that uses a photo of John Walker from the end of the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier when he was first given the shield. And this article reads, Fall of a Hero, the John Walker story. Few have fallen further from grace than the putative heir to the mantle of Captain America, John Walker. Not long ago, Walker was thrust into the public consciousness with all the fanfare Washington could muster. And we see a story by Rory Bruin, and Rory Bruin is an art director on this movie. He previously worked on Christopher Nolan's Tenet. The story of what went wrong starts long before his unveiling just a few short years ago. While no one could doubt that the boots of Steve Rogers were big ones to fill by any man's standards, Walker did seem to fit the bill, a decorated combat veteran from the Army Rangers, and then it gets cut off. When John comes out of this shame vision, he turns back to look down the deep pit of the elevator shaft as if he kind of looks ready to jump, or at least considering it for a beat too long, like Yelena's self-destructive leap that opened this movie. Bob tells him that when he was younger, he worked a summer job as a meth-addicted sign-twirling chicken, setting up the crazy moment in one of his void shame rooms. Later, Val and her commander, Holt, send in a strike team. Yelena and Bob have another private moment where he reveals he took took the medical trial with Ox to try to make something better of himself, saying that he had always had these episodes since he was a kid, with a high and then a big low, followed by a blank. And later we can infer that these might have started by witnessing his father's abuse, but it's just murky enough to imply that the void might have always existed in him. Yelena fights through the strike team, tying Bob to herself with a fire hose to keep him from helping. It kind of sets up how these two will be tethered together around the neck in Bob's attic in the void later, and how at the end of the movie, Yelena just knows that because the void was never purely extracted from him, she's just gonna have to stay close to him. Yelena directs Bob's gun to fire at John.
Stop! John, stop! Where are you?
They get out dressed as strike team soldiers, and when they get stopped at the checkpoint, Wyatt Russell gets the biggest laugh from me when the gate guard again orders him to identify himself, and he just goes, no. Bob creates a diversion and gets shot, but he gets back to his feet, and his medical garments are shredded, and those aren't the only thing that's shredded. I mean, damn, dude, it's only one shot in the movie, but hey, if Marvel Studios gives you some fitness trainers and puts you on a nutrition plan, you can't say no. The void creeps into Bob's eyes, and Son Lux's strings work into a frenzy, leading Bob to blast up into the clouds, then come thundering back down to Earth, landing in a huge shockwave. Yelena shows.
Look, if you're seeing this ad, it's kind of a miracle. Only a couple hundred people at a time get to see it, or I would have way too many applications.
Shows John and Ava the paperwork from the lab that explains how Bob was a successful case of Project Sentry. Ava reads the power of 1,000 exploding suns and the golden guardian of good. They actually changed it to 1,000 exploding suns instead of 1,000,000 as it is in the comics. But in the Sentry comics, newspapers do call him the golden guardian of good. And we also see the quote, he will stand for humanity's hope, which is a line about Sentry from New Avengers #9. In the comics, Sentry was part of the Super Soldier program, given a serum 1,000 times stronger than what Steve Rogers got. So it sounds like the Ox group was continuing the legacy of trying to use a new serum cocktail to create this government-controlled human weapon, but just because Bob Reynolds was so unstable from an early age, it amplified something very dark.
This kind of reminds me of
insecure darkness,
the way he was
acting,
or the way he acts, or the way he talks. Kind of reminds me of like,
and Yelena says,
this
yes,
dude
she had a
can
tough life, and she killed
probably
people,
be a
and then
good
she
Peter
got
Parker.
killed. Yelena did not have that much time. He didn't know Antonio Dreykov after Natasha Gate, Taskmaster,
maybe in Secret Wars they should do those
but
shit.
Really, I just think
have
Yelena
him
was
play
just so
Sentry and then have him play like another Peter Parker.
When another widow would die. I think Natasha was really the one exception to that. Alexi's red limo pulls up.
Oh no.
It's coming right at us.
Who is that? It's no one. Oh god.
Yelena! It's your dad! Don't go in the vault! Valentina's gonna burn your life!
Oh my god, hearing Alexi screaming, it's your dad! It's just so wholesome because this is what Alexi would be doing at her soccer games, making her feel even more embarrassed than Mandy, the girl who pooped on the field. Alexi compliments the team Yelena put together, noticing that the light inside her has grown brighter. John sarcastically says, yeah, go Thunderbolts. And Alexi thinks that she genuinely named them after the Pee Wee Soccer Club. Alexi remembers that they were sponsored by Dimitri's Elite Industrial Lighting and Electrical, not Shane's Tire Shop. But I just think it's clear that Alexi's favorite business in their Ohio town was some Russian buddy of his. Alexi tells him this team has the power to be on the Wheaties box. Since Alexi was an 80s Russian hero, he likely would have been jealous of American athletes and celebrities who got to be on boxes of cereal. Then an Ox convoy catches up and Alexi hits the gas, but it tops out at 54 miles per hour. And we see this limo has over 98,000 miles on it, which is way higher than a novelty ride service within a city area should have on it. Alexi activates his defensive measures, which just turn on party lights and fog, and Genuine's pony jump on it. It's similar to the gag in Thor Ragnarok when they're escaping Sakaar on the Grandmaster's pleasure yacht. Alexi swigs vodka and makes a Molotov cocktail that hits the armored truck and then immediately goes out. So Yelena has to lean out the window and shoot, and one of the armored trucks blows up and flips, but it wasn't her gun, it was Bucky!
No, it was actually her gun.
Actually, in my
I don't give a fuck what anybody says, it was actually her gun.
Describes the take of Wyatt Russell.
We did a take where Wyatt turned around and went, Bucky! Because he just looked so cool.
Bucky rides up, taking out these trucks with the same explosive discs that we saw him use on Nick Fury in 2014's Captain America the Winter Soldier. And the way Bucky rides up through that dust and then grabs the shotgun and he flips it around, it's totally an homage to the Terminator in the chase scene in T2 Judgment Day. Sebastian Stan even confirmed that while shooting this sequence, he was listening to the T2 soundtrack obsessively. Bucky shoots out the cable hook, lets it run, and then brakes, grabs the hook with his vibranium arm, and then punches the ground, completely flipping the truck. And I think this is one of my favorite moves I've ever seen in an MCU movie. It's so sick. And I love that even the Thunderbolts seem to recognize this from a meta awareness. They can't help but cheer. Even John Walker, who has fought alongside Bucky before. Val and Mel return to the Watchtower. The existing structure of Avengers Tower is still there, even with the additional penthouse structure beyond the landing pad for the Quinjet that was added for Avengers Age of Ultron, but Ox has now built over it.
I picked the software engineering program because they pay very well.
Before 1010, I was.
By the way, I feel like he didn't really need to blow that fucking car up. He should have just like, you know, blocked it. Like he should have just ran up to it with the motorcycle and just like went in front of it and just like blocked it. You know what I mean? He could have just did that.
Val meets with Bob and places his S belt buckle on the table. She brings up his family history and touches his hand, and then we're taken to Valentina's shame memory, the day when, as a girl in Italy, she accidentally told a man in town where she and her father lived, and then that man showed up to their home and killed her father in front of her. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, known as the Contessa in earlier years of the comics, first appeared in 1968's Strange Tales run as a companion to Nick Fury, and we learned she was born in Italy and her parents were actually killed for aiding in some unspecified resistance movement. So I assume her father's involvement in that resistance is what got him killed in this scene, but Italy was under a fascist rule during World War II, but Valentina would not have been a kid during that point in history. She was definitely born after it. So it's not really clear why her father was killed from the scene, but I'm assuming the killer was someone outside of the law, which is why Valentina is so obsessed with world security and having the strongest weapons now. When Mel talks to Val, the necklace she's been wearing all movie really stands out in the scene. Many have likened Mel's necklace with the Songbird icon. Songbird, Melissa Gold, or Screamin' Mimi, was part of the original Thunderbolts lineup when it was created by Baron Zemo. To be clear, that's not the Thunderbolts era that this movie is focusing on. This movie, I would say, is adapting something closer to the Dark Reign era, mixed with Century's comic arcs, and the name Thunderbolts is really just a coincidence with it being the nickname of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. That connection is not really drawn in this movie. Bucky restrains Alexei, Ava, Yelena, and John, and he puts Ghost in the Chitauri handcuffs that we saw earlier.
Here's what I feel like they should have done, bro. Here's what I feel like they should have done, bro. They should have had Zemo be in it. They should have had and they should have had Red Hulk be in it. Okay? That's what I feel like they should have done. Shit, man.
Clearly to keep her from...
Do that, okay? Fucking A, Marvel. Fucking A. Fucking A.
From phasing away.
Fucking A.
And again, I'm not sure if these are the same ones they put on Loki, but I think they have the same alien technology that prevents teleportation out of them, since Loki is able to use sorcery tricks of like duplication casting and a similar type of teleportation. That's not exactly the same thing, but you can imagine there would be certain technology that would just keep slippery people like this restrained. Bucky realizes he has a team of heroes who actually can help stop Val in New York City after his call with Mel, and he gives a pretty great speech to get them into it.
Look, I've been where you are. The past doesn't go away, so you can either live with it forever, or you can do something about it.
Alexei has dreamed of this moment to have a true Avengers team.
Yes!
So they get to New York, and this city shows no signs of the police state or curfew imposed by Mayor Fisk that it's supposed to be under as of the season 1 finale of Daredevil Born Again. But I think we're finding that there is just a clearer and clearer line between Marvel Studios and Marvel Television. John, Yelena, and Ava right in the back.
What about your hat?
The hat. The helmet?
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
It's like cool, right? You like it?
Do you like the hat?
Yeah, I think the hat's pretty sweet.
Then cool.
I feel like these comments about his little hat are why John changes his headgear when they rebrand into the new Avengers in the post-credit scene. Alexei asks Bucky,
"What kind of super serum did you get?"
I don't know, regular. Hydra.
Hydra? Oh, fancy. Mine was Soviet recreation, but it's still good, you know. We are the same, you and me.
Well,
I mean, we are different, but we are the same.
remember that even though Hydra had a facility in Siberia, Hydra was technically a bigger network and a separate organization than the normal Russian government. So while the Russians, like the Americans, were all trying to recreate the super soldier serum in different and various diluted ways, Hydra had its own successful program that produced the Winter Soldier, actually the Winter Soldiers, as there were many of them, and ultimately that cocktail is what led to the batch that we saw in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Bucky's plan is to just ram this truck into the lobby of the Watchtower. When he jumps out, he rips off the car door and uses it as a shield, recreating the first time his buddy Steve used a makeshift shield in 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger. The Thunderbolts beat the crap out of these Ox Guards, and I just like how right outside this on the street is the same area where the 2012 Avengers fought the Chitauri, with that same bridge level where Natasha and Steve fought in the later stages of that battle. In fact, on that bridge, we know from the Hawkeye
Odin Valhalla Rising, now available on mobile and PC, exclusively with Google Play Games. Ascend to Valhalla.
Hawkeye series is a plaque that commemorates those original 6. Val invites them up the elevator, and she pours a drink from the bar, which is the same bar set that Tony Stark had in the 2012 Avengers movie. Val says, "Isn't it crazy to think of all the monumental fights that happened exactly where you're standing?" Indeed, Tony Stark's face-off with Loki was right here. The Avengers fought Ultron's first form right here. And in the time heist in Endgame, the future Avengers came back to this location to steal the Tesseract and the Scepter. And speaking of that Scepter, it is back on display in the background of this room. We also see another Chitauri gun, and I might be wrong, but I think we see Coulson's destroyer armor prototype gun in these display cases. Val taunts them, calling John a junior varsity Captain America, and I think he takes more offense to just junior varsity because we know he played on a football team and probably was varsity. She says Bucky has survived less than half a congressional term. I suppose she assumes he's gonna die or at least have to resign, and she calls Alexei an old Santa, but really she's just trying to get them to be violent with her to incite Sentry to overreact, because she invites Bob down, and he's got a new look as Sentry. And damn, it's pretty comic accurate, down to the hair. This casting was great. The golden suit he wears actually looks like it's made of the same fabric that they use on Anthony Starr as Homelander in The Boys. And I don't think that was an accident, because Sentry is the same kind of lab-grown, perfect superhero with a hair trigger mental health imbalance. Val says that he's stronger than all the Avengers rolled into one, and soon he'll be known as Earth's Mightiest Hero, taking the Avengers' classic moniker of Earth's Mightiest Heroes and making it singular. Val orders Sentry to take down this violent group of criminals, as she calls them. It leads to a big fight. Yelena tries to back out, but it's too late. Sentry throws Alexei out the window and then he yanks him back into the bar. Sentry folds John's shield into a taco. Bucky tries to stab him, and Bucky even does his signature badass move of dropping the knife from one hand to the other that we saw in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but it fails, and Sentry punches him up and then flies to catch him to hit him again. He sees Ghost phasing around him, and then No Look grabs her throat, and for a second I thought he was gonna go Omni-Man on her. Then I remembered that he's just pulling his punches to try not to kill them. He catches Bucky's punch and then superheats the arm and yanks it off. The Thunderbolts retreat, but Bob holds back. The Thunderbolts regroup outside on the sidewalk. Yelena in particular insults the others, saying, "I suck, I'm terrible, we're all terrible." And in this moment, there's an extra as a New Yorker passing her on a sidewalk and gives her the funniest look, like extra of the year right here. Bob argues with Val on whether he should take orders from her, since if he's more powerful than the Avengers, and they include a god, referring to Thor, then that makes him a god as well. This isn't really Bob talking, it's the Void. So that is what is choking Val, so that Mel has to hit the kill switch. As they leave though, the shadows of the floor absorb into his body and he turns dark, and boom, tiny white eyes. I love this visual choice because it does remind us of how the Void's eyes look in certain comics, but adapted on screen and live action, I love the choice to make his eye holes just tiny little pinpricks. Like the Void, it doesn't want to emit any light whatsoever. And I'm reminded of the 1990 film Ghost, when those rotoscope shadow demons would just show up to drag souls to hell, how they would have eyes for just a few frames and discernible faces with tiny little eye holes of light. Also, director of the Annabelle sequels and Shazam movies, David F. Sandberg uses this technique in his horror work, notably in his feature version of Lights Out. You see this a lot in creepypasta art because it plays on two innate visual fears: a shadowy shape and our anxiety over the unknown, and our paranoia over being watched by something we can't really make out, like seeing a predator's eyes reflecting back to us from the darkness. Florence Pugh pours her heart into Yelena's confession to Alexei, how she feels so alone, how she's lost her sister, her father, and how she has so many things she feels shame over. And then, like John Walker's doom scrolling with his phone, we hear another example of how these things are psychologically killing us. Yelena says, "All I do is sit and look at my phone and think about all the terrible things that I've done, and then I go to work and I drink and I go home to no one and I sit and I think about all the terrible things that I've done again." And she needs Alexei to cut off this spiral. And I mean, isn't that the death spiral we often find ourselves in? It's a kind of emotional hard truth and specificity that we don't normally hear in Marvel movies, and I loved this moment. Alexei reassures her that she was the light that could brighten any room, and that as a kid, she wanted to be the goalie on the Thunderbolts soccer team so that she could be the one everyone relies on when they make mistakes. Yes, even Poopy Pants Mandy. Now, the way way Dark Sentry enters this scene is very unsettling. It really just starts with people behind Yelena in the background of the previous scene, just frozen, looking up. And as more and more civilians do the same, we see his dark silhouetted form just floating silently, waiting for people to realize he's there. The first Ox soldier who fires on him, we hear the Void say, "Are you tired of fighting? Here, let me help you." Like he sincerely believes that he is freeing them from their pain. And I love how they manipulate Louis Pullman's voice for this, like we're hearing two versions of his voice layered on top of each other.
Look what you unleashed.
And when he voids these people, he flattens them into a shadow. So director Jake Schreier confirmed to Collider's Perry Nemiroff that the look of this flat shadow was inspired by the blast shadows from victims of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
That definitely came from images from Hiroshima and those kind of shadows.
Actually, he went into some really cool detail of how they were able to get this effect to look so great.
It's a frame and a half of animation between when they disappear and when they become a shadow, and anything longer than that starts to feel like you're getting into kind of CG vapor territory. So it has to be quick. You almost feel exposed because it seems so simple. And then there's other things about it where, like, because it doesn't happen so often in the movie, like the camera needs to be more or less in line, almost like an eclipse, like with where the voiding is happening and where the shadow goes, that if you look at it from a profile perspective, it doesn't really work because it's such a short effect.
I love to hear Schreier talking through this. And thank you, Harry, for asking about this. Like, you could see this creative thought playing out on screen. And it's why the voiding is so scary, because it happens fast, 1.5 frames exactly, with little warning. And because it happens toward us or away from us, never in profile, it's like we're witnessing an eclipse and light is being denied to us. And we feel like it's both an innate terror of being draped in shadow and the extensions of the void's fingers reaching out toward you. Holt and his helicopter pilot are among the first to get voided, resulting in a crash into the scaffolding and raining debris. So the Thunderbolts stray into action. Yelena sees a crashing truck and calls "Dad!" And she jumps to Alexei, who springboard launches her toward the truck to save someone. This is the same move her sister Natasha did with Alexei's American counterpart Steve Rogers in this same location in the Battle of New York in the 2012 Avengers film, and I loved seeing this awesome assist coming back. The truck hits a news van, sending it rolling into two more people, and Bucky jumps in using its arm to bounce the truck out of harm's way. And when the second helicopter crashes, Ghost phases in to push a guy out of the way, phasing out to let the fiery wreckage move through her. And as one huge piece of rubble nearly crushes a woman, John redeems his selfish move in the elevator shaft earlier when he freed the pressure against his back to now be the one hero using that same back to push against the rubble, despite not being able to hold it alone. And now the other Thunderbolts come to his aid. And the applause they get isn't just for these individual saves, but I think the people around are just happy to see them working together on something. Like they are just inspired to see heroes cooperating in addition to just saving people. Val clocks this and you can see her already getting ideas here. Alexei saves a little girl in overalls, which must feel like a big win for a girl dad like him, but then immediately, poof, voided. Them kids. The void voids person after person at random, even ones fleeing away from him, and their shadows spread and join together in a collective darkness. Yelena walks toward this darkness, instinctively knowing that she has to join Bob in this darkness in order to help him. While everyone else was trying to attack Bob, she was always the one trying to save him. Yelena again wakes up in the void, shame room of her memory of getting Anya killed, but now she runs into a wall of a painted backdrop. This is a literal room, an enclosed set, like the Truman Show, a presentation of a reality, one that you were meant to loop through and not escape. This choice is something Jake Schreier credited to production designer Grace Yoon, who worked with him on Beef and the horror film Hereditary, and wanted the surreal elements of this movie to feel practical. It's supposed to feel like a set, not an actual forest, because it's not a reality, it's the way that your mind records it as like a movie. But Yelena smashes through the set wall into another memory that's oriented 90 degrees to the forest, and when she looks back through the hole, she sees the forest through it, and young Yelena, Anya, and that man are all staring at her, which is very creepy. But the fact that this new room feels practically linked to the forest room is something that also might seem familiar from Eternal Sunshine in the Spotless Mind, where director Michel Gondry and writer Charlie Kaufman designed a memoryscape where disconnected rooms were physically connected and transitioned through using lighting shifts. Now Yelena finds herself in another shame room, a red room memory of the girls having to rapidly assemble guns. Yelena wins and gets to stand aside and watch while the woman whips the hands of the slower girls. Adult Yelena holds her younger self to block her from seeing this, but then Yelena sees Bob in his attic through the mirror, but when she crashes through it, she just sees another version of herself leaning against a bathtub, drunk and passed out. This alternate self jump scares, grabbing her arm, and then forcing her to drink too. Yelena looks through another mirror and sees Bob, and we get this really cool practical transition done mostly just through lighting and shifting set walls into Bob's attic. We should also remember that this isn't the first time Yelena has looked through a bathroom mirror above a sink and experienced a surreal transition. Hawkeye showed Yelena's blipping from Thanos' snap from her point of view as she looked into a bathroom mirror that she dusted out of and then back into reality 5 years later as that bathroom decor shifted around her. So Yelena is really destined to be the person to make this metaphysical journey. Yelena finds Bob dressed in his childhood clothes, fiddling with a Rubik's Cube as he witnesses his father abusing his mom downstairs. Yelena changes her earlier advice, saying that we can't just stuff this stuff down and bury our darkness, that it has to be something that we work through together. And she tells Bob that she knows this is possible because she has already felt this lighter burden just by being with him. The void makes the attic start attacking them both. The walls bend around Yelena like the effect in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, and the curtain chokes them. The others arrive, Ghost slices the curtain, Bucky and John punch away debris, and Alexei just pointlessly rips a pillow open. We don't see what the shame rooms looked like for the other characters like Alexei, Ava, or Bucky. Bucky just jokes that he's had a great pass, so it went great. We saw quite a few of his shame flashbacks in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier as he went on his apology tour, but I assume the 1991 killing of Tony Stark's parents were one of those rooms for him. Meanwhile, outside, the void takes over the whole city. We see a workplace where the shadow voids the onlookers, but also drapes down over the light fixtures and blacks out the computer screens. In a wide shot, the shadow starts to work its way up Freedom Tower, but doesn't completely engulf it. We cut away before it does. Maybe it's just too sad to see that one get fully harmed in any way. Back in the void, John bashes Bob's abusive dad in the face, and they fall down to an outdoor street corner with an obviously painted backdrop. And I love this effect, especially since we learned that Bob is remembering this as being high on meth at the time. This is a memory Bob hinted at earlier when he was addicted to meth and working as a spinny sign chicken for, we see on the sign, Alfredo's bail bonds. Bucky knocks out this chicken, and then they loop back to the Malaysian lab where this all began for Bob. Bob says that he was looking for more drugs in Southeast Asia until some guy approached him for a medical study, which ended up being Ox experimenting on addicts like him. And it works for Bob, releasing the void. And the void now appears, restraining the others as he taunts Bob into attacking him. They fight, and the void initially knocks him down and says, "We will always be alone." We see the others stretch away from Bob, but Bob tackles the void, punching him, and the void laughs, and in addition to his eyes, we can now make out pale white teeth. Ugh. Fighting the void like this is only helping the darkness spread into Bob's body, so Yelena breaks free and leaps over to Bob to hold him back. The others join in a group hug, and now we see why Jake Schreier compared this to Toy Story 3. The refusal to fight the void is what repels the darkness. They need to physically hold each other to keep that darkness away. So the void releases its clutches from them and from the whole city, and that includes the little girl in overalls. But we have to ask, what kind of shame room did that girl go down into? Did she poop her pants during a soccer game? Afterwards, Bob has no memory of what they just went through, so his memory blackouts are still affecting him. The void is not gone. He's not fully healed. And I like this because that's just really how depression works. You know, unfortunately, you never fully get rid of the darkness. You just learn how to manage it. And now he just knows how to keep the void from taking over completely. The answer is just be friends with Yelena. Like, the movie does not answer where the darkness comes from, but it does teach us how to manage that darkness, to face it head on and not over aggressively fight it, but just really know that you're always going to have it, but you're never fully alone because that darkness is something we all experience. So is Sentry okay? We're gonna talk about that in this weekend's episode of the Sneak Peek. And actually, New Rockstars just launched a new 4th channel called New Rockstars Highlights, which is just gonna be a clips channel. We're gonna share our favorite clips from our longer podcast episodes, like the Sneak Peek and the soon-to-be returning Rumor Rundown. So if you want to subscribe there, you can. Thank you. So they step up to Val to arrest her, but Val leads them through a barrier where we realize she tricked them into a press conference. Marvel ending their films and press conferences is just a device Kevin Feige loves to do to signal to us that this movie is the arrival of someone important, like Tony Stark at the end of Iron Man, Peter Parker at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, T'Challa at the UN in the mid-credits scene of Black Panther, and now these new Avengers. I like how one of the microphones on the podium is WHIH, the MCU in-universe news service, so you know this is official. Yelena leans over to Val to say, "We own you now," and we end the film back in a close-up of Yelena taking a breath of relief as Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme plays over the score. Now, in yesterday's Ending Explain and post-credit video, I broke down the fun visuals in the closing credits designed by Perception using real-life periodicals as the new Avengers are questioned and mocked by the public in the media. One with the group rendered as Queen in a Bohemian Rhapsody pose on Rolling Stone. We see a version of Washington crossing the Delaware with the guinea pig on the bow. We see David Harbour referencing his own DC character in Creature Commandos Frankenstein as he hands a flower to the little girl he saved. Really, these final minutes work so well because, according to Jake Schreier, Kevin Feige knew that skeptical audiences might kind of roll their eyes at this lineup being called called The New Avengers by Val, so they get ahead of that cynicism by mocking The New Avengers with these jokey media headlines and images, so that by the end of the sequence, we in the audience start to defend this lineup of goofballs from the snarky, cynical media. And when the Thunderbolts asterisk is torn away to the New Avengers title logo, we all cheer. And that takes us right into two great post-credit scenes, the second of which was directed by the Russo brothers and seamlessly assimilates the New Avengers into the same MCU of Avengers Doomsday as they become the welcome party to the Fantastic Four. So while overall the Thunderbolts film was an emotionally heavy exploration of mental health that got a lot of great character moments and laughs along the way, it does end with this additional layer of a familiar Avengers level crisis. And a few final details in the post-credit scene: the red star on Bucky's sleeve, in addition to recalling his red star on his original Winter Soldier arm, also has the segmented form of the star that we see on Sam Wilson's Captain America shield, which is just a nice detail. Also, the sponsors on Alexi's New Avengers tracksuit are all real-life brands who have done product integrations with Marvel Studios. You may remember Peloton as the product placement when President Ross was working out on Air Force One in Brave New World, and you gotta remember the crazy Tide commercials for that movie. And the book that Bob is reading is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, A Way of Being, which shows that Bob is working on his mental health in whatever proactive way he can. I hope Bucky doesn't let this guy read Kierkegaard. It'll just bum him out and give him some wrong ideas about moral philosophy. And Yelena mentioning that they weren't looped in on the space crisis suggests that Nick Fury, head of Saber, might be giving his intel to Sam's Avengers, which I assume Carol Danvers is a part of. But I went into everything with the New Avengers and the Fantastic Four and Doomsday in yesterday's video, so go check that out. Whew, I love this movie. Comment down below with your thoughts and your favorite detail from this breakdown. And a special thanks to our YouTube members: Frederick Price, Jeremy Dunham, TDS on a Quest, Cameron, Marissa Miranda, Rick Denman, Smokey the Bear, and City Monster, who all support us on the executive producer level. You can support us by hitting that join button down below. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 4 channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdown and news coverage of everything.
I'm just kidding though. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's put on this fucking post-credit scene. Let's go.
We quilt this city. We quilt this city with a coffee. We'll quilt this city. We quilt this city with a coffee.
Keep it quilted with Quilted Northern.
We quilt this city.
Get mechanic training at Universal Technical Institute and learn the skills needed to pursue a career.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is an explanation and breakdown of the ending and post-credit scenes for Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, including finally what the hell the asterisk means. Spoilers before I continue. Details about all this stuff began to leak way too early, and I just want to give you fair warning that I will be spoiling everything, not just the ending and post-credit scenes, but also the full movie plot, because you kind of need to know those details to properly understand the sending. But be sure to check out nerdriot.shop, where we have the greatest Thunderbolts-inspired designs. I'm wearing the asterisk shirt. We also got So Full, So Filled. These are the best way to support New Rockstars. Okay, one final spoiler warning. Okay, Thunderbolts ends by rebranding this team as the New Avengers, a squad on the cover of several publications in the Wheaties box, and now feuding with the real Avengers led by Captain America Sam Wilson, and this group witnesses the Fantastic Four crossing over into this universe. Woohoo! So how do we get here? Well, brief summary of the film. And again, spoilers. Yelena Belova works for Val, who, as CIA director, still has ties to the Shadow Ops organization called the Ox Group, and she's now facing impeachment over that. Bucky Barnes is now a congressman, and at Val's charity event, he makes contact with her assistant Mel and plots to take Val down. Val assigns Yelena to take out Ghost Ava Starr, who she says is trying to rob her vault in the desert, but once there, Yelena realizes she's part of a 4-way assassination plot with Ava and John Walker and Taskmaster. Ava shoots Taskmaster in the head, and she dies. But this brawl bumps a crate containing Bob, a really nice dude with spotty memories and a hinted dark side of his psyche called the Void. When Yelena and John touch Bob's hand, they experience visions of their most shameful memories. They escape the facility, and Bob gets shot, but discovers he has superpowers. And they actually learn that Bob was part of Project Sentry, Val's program to try to create a super soldier as powerful as all the Avengers rolled into one that she can control. Val takes Bob back to Avengers Tower, which is now completing renovation to become becomes Sentry's watchtower and helps him hone his powers. But the Red Guardian picks up the group in the desert with his limo service, and we learn that Yelena's youth soccer team was called the Thunderbolts, and this group starts casually calling themselves that. Bucky saves them from pursuing Ock's forces and enlists them to stop Val. Val reintroduces Bob as Sentry, who easily overpowers this group on the penthouse level of Avengers Tower. The crew feels defeated, but then Bob turns on Val, and his dark entity, the Void, takes over and begins voiding people into terrifying shadows while consuming the entire city into shadow. Yelena enters this void, which takes the form of endless shame rooms based on her trauma, and she finds Bob stuck in his own memory of one of the times his father abused his mother downstairs. So the Thunderbolts all get in there to help break Bob free, returning back to the first moment he received his serum. Bob beats his shadow self, but Yelena and the others hug and restrain him, and that restraint and that love are enough to get Bob to regain control of his body and his mind, curing the city of the Void Shadow and bringing all the victims back, even a little girl. Val tricks the Thunderbolts into a press conference where she names them the New Avengers. Yelena whispers to Val, "We own you," and we hear Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme music kicking in. Director Jake Schreier said that to offset any skepticism or confusion the viewing audience may feel in this moment by this movie ending with declaring this lineup as the New Avengers, Kevin Feige actually recommended a credits montage of headlines showing the media of this world mocking them for that, to give any viewers like that time to laugh along and time to adjust to the idea, and by the end of the sequence to kind of defend this group as the rightful New Avengers. So these end credits, designed by the amazing design studio Perception, include various headlines from real-world publications. We see an article titled "New Avengers? The world holds its breath. What comes next?" and a lift-out quote, "Not my Avengers." One headline that just says, "Nope." We see the cover of the Hollywood Reporter with the Thunderbolts/New Avengers fighting. One article titled, "Is New Always Better?" We see an op-ed by David Brooks, who is a real-life New York Times writer, headlined, "I like him." We see a Rolling Stone cover showing the four of them posed like Queen in the famous Bohemian Rhapsody cover pose. We see a snarky New York Post headline, "Be-Vengers." We see a headline, "The Huh?" heard around the world. We see a cover of The Republic with art showing Red Guardian like King Kong on the Empire State Building. We see cover art of John Walker sadly riding his bent shield like a saddle with no horse under it. We see Elena in a Rosie the Riveter style pose with "We Can Do It." We see the New York Times cover art of the New Avengers on a construction beam with the city behind them. We see an article titled, "How Will They Lead?" showing the New Avengers pose like the famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, and Elena's little guinea pig that she found in Kuala Lumpur is on the bow of this boat. And lastly, we see Red Guardian holding a flower out to a little girl, maybe the one he saved before she was voided into a shadow, which is an homage to the famous moment in the 1931 Frankenstein film, which is a bit ironic considering David Harbour voices Eric Frankenstein in Creature Commandos for DC. The Thunderbolts title is ripped away, showing
I gotta watch that. I haven't watched it. By the way, I'm gonna be uploading some movies, anime, and TV shows. By the way, if y'all want to watch that, I'm gonna be uploading full-length episode reactions, not just the clip, reactions of it. Because you know why? I don't want people to be like, "Oh, I have to go on this website called Patreon and I have to pay $5 and $10 just to watch this thing." I'm like, nah, bro, nah. That's not how it works. That's not how it's gonna be. Okay, y'all gonna watch the full-length reaction of my reaction to this to movies and stuff. So I just gotta say that right now. With that being said, let's continue on with this video.
His earlier stated dream of making it to the Wheaties box has finally come true. The box shows the New Avengers with John Walker in his new suit with a beret, Yelena, Bucky, Ava, and Red Guardian taking the photo shoot the most serious with a flex pose. Alexei reaches past a woman shopping and says, "Wow, so many choices. What is this? Oh, Wheaties. Toasted whole grain wheat flakes, whole grain vitamins, actually great for kids, huh?" And then he awkwardly smiles and puts the box next to his face. The woman says thanks, and she takes the box and pushes her cart away, leaving the box on a stack, not taking it. He calls after her, "That's me on the box!" And then Starship's "Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now" kicks in. The second and more important of the stingers is the post-credit scene, and it might have been spoiled for you if you were looking closely at the music section of the credits and saw Michael Giacchino's Fantastic Four theme credited. We cut to the New Avengers' new A logo, and 14 months later, as this A on the door twists counterclockwise to open to the renovated penthouse level of Avengers Tower or the Watchtower. The New Avengers enter the room, and Yelena says, "But we are the Avengers. The government said so."
The government said so. The government.
Want to break into cybersecurity but don't have experience? The Google Cybersecurity Certificate uses real-world scenarios.
How does Sam Wilson not understand that? And Bucky says, well, he does have the shield. John Walker says, well, I got a shield too. And he and Bucky start to argue about it, whether it's an actual shield or just a shitty shield. While John does still have his bent shield that was molded into this taco shape by Sentry, he wears a new suit with brighter colors and a military beret, similar to the one we saw him wearing in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but now blue. That actually might have been inspired by the light mockery Yelena and Ava gave him in the back of the truck about his little hat. Bucky also has a new look, sporting a new red star outline on his sleeve, recalling the red star of his earlier version of the Winter Soldier arm before he got the vibranium one. Yelena stays on topic. If he puts together a team and the team is called the Avengers, then who are the real Avengers? And John Walker says, that's a question the internet has been asking, and judging by the very nasty memes I have read, they don't think that it's us. Yelena asks Bucky, weren't you going to talk to him? And Bucky says he already did, and it went poorly. John Walker leans back in his chair, muttering to himself, I don't know what any of these buttons do. I didn't mark any of them. Yelena is still on the question of Sam Wilson. You know he filed for copyright of the name? We're losing credibility. And Ava says, of which we had very little to begin with. Yelena says, and now there's this huge space crisis, and no one is telling us about it. John Walker says, we're running out of space already? It's impossible. This building is enormous. And Yelena snaps, outer space. And then she speaks to her AI device saying, run threat analysis. I want the full report. Then Alexi walks up wearing a heavily sponsored jumpsuit, NASCAR style, with brands like Heineken, Barbasol, Tide, Wheaties, AMPM, and Peloton. These, I believe, are all actual sponsors who have done product integrations with Marvel Studios releases. Alexi says, hello team, I heard about Sam Wilson. He is dumb litigious man, but I am smart. I'm smart man. I have smart solve. Avengers with a Z. There's no copyright. Yelena just says, no. And Alexi goes on, it's soft too. If you're like bottom of baby seal, you want to savor that? And Yelena just says, I don't want to feel bottom of baby seal butt. Alexi says he made jumpsuits for everyone, including Bob, reading over in the corner with what looks like a milkshake. And then an alert goes off as a voice says, unidentified craft entering orbit. Bucky tells Yelena to pull up a satellite image, and she says to do so, and to fire up the jets. Yes, they have jets. Alexi says that they wouldn't need to fire up the jets if they had a sentry who could fly, and Bob apologizes, saying, sorry guys, I can't be the sentry without the other side. I did the dishes though. John says, what were you gonna do? Just like ride Bob into the sky? And Alexi says, yes, can you imagine the Red Guardian riding on top of Sentry, cresting over clouds? And Yelena just mutters, this is why we are the Avengers with a Z. And the voice alert returns. Flight image populated, extra dimensional ship entering atmosphere. Alexi asks, extra dimensional, what does that mean? And we hear the low thumping of the middle section of Michael Giacchino's Fantastic Four score. A satellite image shows a rocket speeding toward Earth from space. It rotates, and on the hull, we see the bright blue 4 logo of the Fantastic Four, with the main horn theme from Giacchino's score kicking in. Yelena observes this, not sure what to make of it. Yes, it's finally here. The second post-credit scene was actually directed by the Russo brothers, who are currently in production for Avengers Doomsday. Similar to the Russos directing the post-credit scene of 2015's Ant-Man, which is really just a scene from the next movie, Civil War, that they were directing with Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, and Chris Evans. This really is the kind of old school approach of post-credit scenes that will actually appear in some form in Avengers Doomsday. But obviously this is also tying in with Fantastic Four First Steps, which is coming sooner this July. So let's start with Fantastic Four. The latest trailer seems to suggest that the Fantastic Four might be faced with letting their Earth be destroyed in that alternate universe. A shot in the trailer shows what looks like Earth blowing up as this same Fantastic Four ship faces that destruction. And we see a shot of Sue Storm on some ship standing up with tears in her eyes watching something. The tone of that recent trailer suggests that this might be a classic disaster movie in which part of the spectacle will be seeing exactly how this utopian society inevitably gets wrecked. It's easy to keep track of physical things like your phone, your wallet, and your keys. I put my wallet in my pocket and it stays there. But data doesn't work that way. Put your data in your proverbial pocket and somebody could copy it as you walk by. Websites take your control. Rockstar's use code building to the city. And the best reason I can think of that he does that, as opposed to staying larger than the planet and using his mechanisms on his ship, Tatu, to destroy the planet and turn it into matter and energy that he can consume, is that this guy is looking for something. And that something, we're pretty sure, is Reed Richards and Sue Storm's baby, Franklin Richards, a reality warper, an Omega-level mutant with an important connection to Galactus in more recent comics. Given the Abraham Isaac choice of giving up a son or letting the entire Earth be destroyed, you can imagine this being an impossible situation for the whole family. They might actually leave their world behind to die. Now, we don't know for sure if the Fantastic Four and Baby Franklin are on this ship in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene. Like, it could just be Herbie the robot piloting it, bringing a message. Or the ship could also be bringing additional refugees from that universe. We just don't know yet. We also know from decoding Reed Richards' chalkboard in that trailer that his equations prove him to be seeking a solution in the multiverse. We see a Penrose diagram, which in theoretical physics is a way to conceive of bending a space-time around black holes and a possible way to connect to a parallel universe.
Parallel. You got the parallel universe.
Odin Valhalla Rising. Now available on mobile and PC exclusively with Google Play Games.
Another diagram depicts a wormhole that Reed labeled as another universe. You can also see Einstein's field equations, which are another way of expressing space-time. Many have interpreted this as a clue that Reed will create his multiverse bridge, a way for him to commune with the Council of Reeds, which could include the past Reed Richardses we've seen in other films. But in this instance, I think it's either Reed trying to open a portal to trap Galactus in another universe, or failing that, a rift through which he and his family escape to seek a new Earth. And that could be what we are seeing here, the Fantastic Four's arrival to the Earth of the 616 universe. But I will say, I would just be a bit surprised if Marvel spoils its own ending to its next film with a Thunderbolts post-credit scene and its most recent trailer. So again, it is worth considering that we might be seeing something else here. Like, First Steps could end with the family using the ultimate nullifier to scare off Galactus, as they do in the comics. That actually could be the device sketched on Reed's blackboard that I spotted in the trailer. And then, to protect the Earth they come from, they might still have to leave it with their reality warper baby. With the Russo brothers directing this scene, it's definitely a setup for Avengers Doomsday. We know from the Avenged Chair's March 26th announcement that both the Fantastic Four and the Thunderbolts are returning for Doomsday. In this scene, Yelena mentions the huge space crisis that other authorities are not telling the Thunderbolts about. I'm assuming that the space crisis is an incursion rift in nearby space, either one created by the Fantastic Four from the other side, or one building on the rift that brought Monica Rambeau to the X-Men universe in the Marvels, or maybe both. Jonathan Hickman's Time Runs Out storyline that leads to Secret Wars 2015 begins with the alternate Earth appearing red in the sky over the planet over Wakanda. Avengers Doomsday could open with a similar visual, but with the butts of two alternate Earths appearing in space over us, the Fantastic Four Earth and the X-Men Earth. The Doomsday Chair's announcement also confirmed that the OG X-Men are returning. Kelsey Grammer Beast, Patrick Stewart Professor X, Ian McKellen Magneto, James Marsden Cyclops, Rebecca Romaine Mystique, and Alan Cumming Nightcrawler. Maybe more of them. I think they are in the Earth 10005 universe, and that's the universe we saw in the Marvel's post-credit scene, the universe Monica Rambeau ended up in after passing through an extra-dimensional rift in space. Now, why are we 14 months later specifically? We know Thunderbolts takes place after the events of Captain America Brave New World because Val references the president turning into Red Hulk, and we see the damage Red Hulk did to the Washington Monument being repaired in this movie. Captain America Brave New World was set in April 2027. Thunderbolts would be a couple months after that, maybe summer 2027, so Doomsday seems to be set in fall 2028. I suppose 14 months is enough time for the public to form opinions about the new Avengers and for Sam Wilson's Avengers to rally. I really like the new logo of the new Avengers with the crossbar of the A striking through the hairline like a spike, and the fact that the new Avengers got enough funding from Val to redesign this penthouse level of the tower to have this blast door, making it more secure than it was when just an elevator from the ground level would open up right in the penthouse. And yes, we also heard a mention of jets that they have. They have access to some kind of Quinjet. While Val was trying to resume construction to make it Sentry's watchtower, you could say that she moved a bunch of the Battle of New York relics from the charity event into the penthouse level, including Loki's scepter and Chitauri weapons. I assume from that she might have poured all of her Ox Group resources into fortifying this tower. And while this base has voice commands and satellite links, Yelena implies that they're still out of the loop with interplanetary threats, which suggests a political division between the rival Avengers teams. Val, who likely still runs the CIA, or maybe 14 months later she might have ascended into higher office, and then Nick Fury, head of Saber, who keeps his eye on interplanetary threats. And I think he would back Sam Wilson's group of Avengers and feed his intel only to them. Captain America Brave New World did end with Sam Wilson feeling tasked to rebuild the Avengers lineup. First on that list is Joaquin Torres, Falcon, other names from the Avengers chairs who make sense to be on Sam Wilson's team, Thor, Ant-Man Scott Lang, Shang-Chi, and pending official confirmations of these actors, Doctor Strange, Peter Parker, and Carol Danvers. We also know the Wakandans and Wakanda-adjacent characters from this Earth will be in Doomsday as well, Black Panther Shuri, M'Baku, and Namor. But what did Bucky mean when he said that his chat with Sam Wilson went poorly? Surely they went through enough together in the Falcon the Winter Soldier to movie past their move your seat up days, and Sam's pep talk in Brave New World was the sweetest moment of that film. So what changed since then? Well, the answer is probably Bob. Imagine it, Sam and Thor and Doctor Strange would probably demand Bucky turn over Bob, considering how dangerous Sentry and the Void are. But Steve Rogers refused to turn Bucky in during Civil War, and I think Bucky would never turn in a misunderstood super soldier freak, especially sweet, sweet Bob. I think that is what's at the center of the Avengers versus New Avengers conflict. Bob is why Sam's Avengers haven't already tried to retake the tower after 14 months. If the New Avengers have laid claim to Avengers Tower, what base of operations is Sam Wilson's Avengers team using? Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum? I've also theorized that they could have built an adamantium fortified base inside of Celestial Island, like how the Avengers turned the Celestial the Progenitor into their Avengers Mountain base in the comics. Kevin Feige has confirmed that these various groups, including the OG X-Men, will come together to fight Doctor Doom and Avengers Doomsday. We also know that things are headed to World, a continent of stitched together broken universes created by Doctor Doom, and Sentry is going to play a big role. Thunderbolts director Jake Schreier suggested Sentry's power set will be important to Doomsday, and Sentry is famous in Marvel Comics as one of the deadliest superheroes, a guy who beat Galactus to a standstill and ripped Ares in half. Sentry's probably gonna rip Deadpool in half in Doomsday, right? Now, we still don't know yet what original story the Russos have in mind for their take on Doctor Doom and Doomsday. Only the 4 words, new mask, same task.
I just thought of this. You know how, like, in Deadpool and Wolverine, they turn Johnny into, like, a pile of goo? If they turn Deadpool into a pile of goo, would they, like, will he be able to, like, regenerate still? I don't know.
That task, we have assumed, is to build a suit of armor around the world, but in a different way. We have to assume that the plot will connect to anchor beings, concept introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine, and the search for anchor beings of each universe. The being whose death triggers the death of that universe. Wolverine was the anchor being of the X-Men universe. Maybe Franklin Richards, or maybe Galactus, or Shalaval Silver Surfer could be the anchor being of the Fantastic Four universe, and we're gonna see who the anchor being of the 616 universe is, or was. Look, there's a lot of information here, and we're gonna be exploring all this stuff further in the coming weeks and months. Our Easter egg breakdown of this movie is coming to New Rockstars tomorrow. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/rockstars and use promo code ROCKSTARS at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/rockstars and use code ROCKSTARS. Thank you, Delete Me, for sponsoring this video. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a big thanks to one of our YouTube members, Cameron, who supports us.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemens, and the Thunderbolts is officially out. And aren't we excited? Isn't it just so fun? And just so you know, I will be spoiling the movie in this video. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch the movie and then you can come back to this video. Just getting that out and open because I don't want you guys yelling at me. Okay, so at the end of the movie, we have our new Avengers. It's very rich, very demure. We've been established with them for over a year as well. However, they are now in conflict with Sam Wilson over the name The Avengers, as his team still holds that title. And remember how in Brave New World, President Ross tasked him with building a new Avengers team? So I guess that directive can still be relevant even when your president is locked away in the raft. So we now have 2 teams of Avengers. Unfortunately, Bucky and Sam are not on the same team, and they're at odds about the whole new name, same job kind of thing. And in this video, I'll explore who will be on Sam Wilson's team by examining the evidence from the Doomsday chairs, considering the remaining superheroes who are now teamless, identifying the ones Sam Wilson might realistically connect with given his limited resources now, and seeing as we're forming them in some way still slightly under the US government, who doesn't have beef with the government and can work with them. But first, before I get into it, be sure to check out nerdriot.shop where you can find the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. Right now, we've got some Thunderbolts merch for you. Walk back into that theater, see the movie again, and brag about it with your new shirt. Maybe you want to spoil it to your friends in a subtle way, or perhaps you want to spoil it in a subtle way. Play some Jedi mind tricks. Get the Fantastic Four merch that we have. They won't even know what you mean by that. You can also rock the WLF hat that we have for The Last of Us. I've been wearing this hat constantly, and everywhere I go, people ask about it. Don't you want to be that cool? Go check out nerdriot.shop to go get your guys some merch. All right, let's get into it. By the end of the Thunderbolts, we learn that Bucky and Sam are now at odds with each other, and this conflict primarily arises because Sam is part of the original Avengers team, which President Ross tasked him with building. Now we have the Johns versus Vaughn situation. If you're in California, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're everywhere else, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But you get it. We're gonna ask which one is better, which one will we rely on when the world is in danger. Johns.
Curious to how to meet the Thunderbolts before they hit the big screen? Want the backstories of Marvel's upcoming heroes right now? What if Hulk, the Thing from Fantastic Four, and even Abomination, 3 of the strongest bruisers out there, teamed up and smashed everything in sight? Introducing the world where anything you can imagine is real. Give me 60 seconds. Let me show you Marvel Future Fight. Marvel Future Fight has over 270 Marvel characters biggest rewards ever. Click the link in the description to download Marvel Future Fight now and build your multiversal team.
So now our Thunderbolts team, aka the New Avengers, consists of Bucky, Red Guardian, Yelena, John Walker, Ghost, and Bob. So far, we expect the old Avengers to consist of Sam Wilson, and from the ending of Brave New World, I'm assuming Joaquin Torres is Falcon. So to really build out the rest of this team, we can easily look at the Doomsday cast, as it already sets up the New Avengers, even some of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, because Phase 6 is really just setting up these big teams. Some remaining folks would make complete sense, not only benefiting the team, but also having links to Sam Wilson prior, and him just knowing them personally, so it just makes sense. Teamless superheroes that haven't found a new team yet, however, are appearing in Doomsday, according to the chairs, are Thor, Shuri's Black Panther, Namor, Shang-Chi, M'Baku, and Loki. Arguably, I doubt Namor should and will join the event.
Dude, if M'Baku is Avenger, bro, I'm walking out the fucking theater, bro. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But seriously, though, what the fuck? Why? 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 I'm not trying to hate on the motherfucker. But why are these two a part of the Avengers? Why is Namor a part of the Avengers in the comics? Is Namor Avenger? Is Namor Avenger? Yes, has been a member in Marvel Comics. Fuck! Shit! And who's the other motherfucker? M'Baku? What the fuck? What the fuck is this? M'Baku is a prominent character. Has the second most powerful warrior in Wakanda after. Damn, bro, what the fuck? Damn. Shit, never mind, bro, my bad. Shit. Hold up. Is Baku Avenger? Hold up. Yes, M'Baku is confirmed to be a. No, I'm not saying that he's. Gosh damn it, son of a bitch. Son of a bitch. Was enlisted by the members to aid the Avengers in the Battle of Earth. Oh. Yes, I know that. Became a renegade and gains his powers by killing a white gorilla, bathing in its blood and eating its flesh. You know what? This motherfucker's the shit. This motherfucker's the shit. This dude's gonna be the Avenger. You know what? Don't fuck with this dude.
Doubt Namor should and will join the Avengers. His comic character sometimes felt like an anti-hero despite being featured in so many comics, and he had even joined the Avengers at one point in time. It's not hard to stick him to any one group, though the Namor that we're seeing in the MCU doesn't really like humans, and I don't think he's willing to change his views on that. He might during Doomsday because he simply won't have the Kingdom of Talokan behind him, but once back to their everyday reality, he'll turn back to the dark side. On the other hand, though, Wakanda Forever ended with Namor yielding to Shuri and telling his people how he believed Black Panther to be the most powerful hero and the most powerful nation on land, but with no allies. So if what he says is true, I can see him appearing in Doomsday and Secret Wars and working together regardless. Shuri only knows some of these heroes, but has fought alongside M'Baku and fought with Namor, so they could become their own unit. However, I still think that would work like the teams we saw in Infinity War, which was like a mishmash of groups to tackle things in that moment, and that was it. Black Panther, on the other hand, I can see on this team, especially since it's clear Shuri didn't take up the mantle of being queen of Wakanda and wandering the world outside of Wakanda. Since Black Panther was a significant help to the Avengers and a big part of their team in the comics, this could be that official bridging we were anticipating with Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. Sam Wilson's new suit is also created by the Wakandan design group, as he mentioned in Brave New World, so there's already a link to the Wakandans there. And if Val spent her time trying to steal from the Wakandans and only envied them for their resources, it makes sense dramatically, and for the plot of course, for a Wakandan to join her opposing team. In my opinion, taking the mantle of a brother left behind while also being a great fighter and one of the most brilliant people coming out of Wakanda Wakanda, she'd be a great setup for the Avengers. There's no evidence that she'd join Miss Marvel's new team of Young Avengers or the Marvel Champions, so there's only one place left for her to really go. As for M'Baku, no, I don't think he's gonna be on the Avengers simply because he's the king of Wakanda right now. Also, he's very connected with his Jabari tribe, and being a member of the Avengers calls for too much immediate action too many times. And when you're a king of a nation and also still dedicated to furthering your tribe, I just don't think he can make time. I recognize T'Challa did this, but T'Challa also learned under the tutelage of his father, T'Chaka, while Shuri had to deal with the unexpected working as a scientist and engineer, and M'Baku hated T'Challa for most of his time in Wakanda. So M'Baku isn't really T'Challa, and neither is Shuri, and maybe they just can't do exactly what T'Challa can do and what we expected him to do. Shang-Chi and Ant-Man feel highly likely to join Sam's team, two confirmed for Doomsday and also coming from the West Coast. Ant-Man was mentioned twice in Captain America Brave New World and has a great history with Sam Wilson, both fighting on his side during Civil War and being locked in the raft together. Additionally, we often take him for granted, even though he really saved us in Endgame, and he still hasn't received the full invitation to be an Avenger. I think it's now finally time that joke is just laid to rest and Sam Wilson will ask him officially to join his team. Ant-Man has officially had his 3 movies that I think are fully done. I'm not expecting an Ant-Man 4, but clearly his time in the MCU isn't really fully done because he's confirmed for Doomsday, and I'm expecting the reveal of him being Avenger is gonna happen during Doomsday. When building this team, I can see Sam reaching back out to Hulk, but as we know from the Thunderbolts, when Valentina mentions reaching out to Hulk, it looks like he's not officially on any team. He's just a point of contact in case of an emergency. But I could see Hulk pointing him towards Shang-Chi, the man with the 10 rings, but also there's that footage of him beating ass on that bus that probably also got back to Sam Wilson. I think it's boring, in my opinion, to compare powers and abilities to the old Avengers, but it's crucial story-wise that the team isn't completely unstoppable. They need flaws and disadvantages. That's why 9 times out of 10, you rarely see teams led by Gaia. It's usually a human with enhanced strength or a highly skilled fighter. So Shang-Chi really fills that spot for an expert fighter, a martial artist with exceptional hand-to-hand combat that we saw in Black Widow, but with the power of the 10 rings. So he's basically like Black Widow meets Miss Marvel, or like Thor and Mjolnir, or Strange with his cloak. You just get the gist. He also fills that spot of magic and sorcery that the Avengers needed with Strange, but got with Wanda. Seeing as Wong has bigger responsibilities on his plate as the Sorcerer Supreme, and America Chavez is just so young and might be reached out to by Miss Marvel, I think Shang-Chi makes the most sense to be on Sam Wilson's Avengers team. Loki is the last person in the chairs that would be an insane member of this new Avengers team that Sam Wilson's making, especially seeing as Thor isn't completely gone, he just has a child with him. Though I don't think he'll be as prominent as Thor was for the Avengers, let alone even join this team, seeing as he has a new bigger role in the MCU as the Keeper of Time. I will say, Marvel can do whatever they want and always does bring Loki back from the dead. Loki has died a lot of times in the MCU, and now as a turned hero, sacrificing his freedom to hold all time together, I just think his story has been closed nicely. But seeing as he's probably like the top 3 of favorite MCU characters, I could see them bringing him back. They've justified bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. They're probably gonna justify bringing Chris Evans back, and they definitely are justifying bringing back the Fox X-Men characters. So we could get a version of Loki that isn't the Keeper of Time. Again, I don't really see the appeal in reversing his conclusion. However, I'm sure they found a way to use him again. I just don't think it's in the future as an Avenger. So those are the characters that appeared on the chairs, and of those, I think we can expect Ant-Man, Shang-Chi, and Shuri to be on Sam Wilson's team with Joaquin Torres as Falcon. It's also important to know, and I assume, these are not the only characters appearing in Doomsday. I'm sure they're gonna have another version of Chairs Round 2, or they're saving those surprise cameos. Wanda! I know Wanda's in that goddamn movie. You can't hide from me. I know she's in that goddamn movie. And that's where I think we'll see someone like She-Hulk. Again, I don't like comparing these powers to the original Avengers of what we need and what we don't need, but we are simply missing a Hulk who is probably just taking care of his son. So this is where She-Hulk comes in. Though we didn't see Tatiana Maslany's name on the chairs yet, I think we will. We just gotta see her in the second round. It's gonna be either her or Brie Larson. You gotta bring one of the two back. It feels weird not to. You might have also noticed I didn't put Rhodey on this list, and I might be kicking my butt in that regard, but the character is simply just never brought back. And even in Secret Invasion, he was a Skrull. It wasn't even our Rhodey. Then they planned to do Armor Wars, but it was slowed down and eventually what I would declare halted. We're missing a version of Iron Man or just like a machine kind of person. I know that like Ant-Man could be that machine person, but you know I'm talking about Rhodey. But I think that's also where Falcon comes in. And while Joaquin Torres is fresh and new, we've got a lot of Rhodey. I think Rhodey and Tony's relationship doesn't mirror that of Steve and Sam, so it's less likely to see him listen to Sam in the first place. If Sam Wilson's team works in tandem or even under the US government, and Rhodey, a long-standing political figure in the MCU, high enough official to work closely with the President of the United States in Secret Invasion before being outed as a Skrull, I just don't think he's gonna be taking orders from Sam because he'll be giving the orders. And I think he's basically really gone in the MCU because he's either on watch now for being a Skrull or dealing with the Skrull fallout. I'm not not saying he's against joining, I'm just saying I think it's beneath him. I wouldn't get my hopes up to see Rhodey on the Avengers team right now, but again, I could be kicking my butt. I'm sure they could call up Don Cheadle anytime and he'll do it. So for those confirmed in Doomsday, I think the Avengers that the new Avengers are fighting will be Sam Wilson, Joaquin Torres as Falcon, Shuri, Ant-Man, and Shang-Chi, but inevitably will include She-Hulk. Then they'll have their Super Soldier, their Flyer, their Black Panther, a Machine Guy, and Mystic and Martial Artist along with a Hulk. And yes, I guess they are missing a god, how Thor was to the Avengers and Sentry sorta is to the Thunderbolts. Still, I don't see any reason for Thor not to be involved with them during Doomsday. However, for the future of the Avengers, I just don't see Thor, Bruce Banner, Namor, M'Baku, or Loki really joining. There's also a chance Doomsday introduces a new god that joins the Avengers. Also remember, we still don't have an official home for Hercules or Gaia yet. Speaking of Gaia, in my opinion, I did not like Secret Invasion. But Marvel doesn't just make things to make things. They want the project to further the MCU and for those characters or events to return in some way, shape, or form, which I don't have complete faith in Gaia returning with the reviews and public outcries. However, she is a pretty strong character to just forget about, and it's also Emilia Clarke. I'm sure they expect her to return even if she's not signed on for multiple projects. She could be that god spot for the new Avengers that Sam Wilson's building, and since she has ties to Sonya Falsworth, she's no longer only seen as a Skrull but maybe a weapon. It doesn't surprise me if the US government knows of her and internally Sam has reached out with an invitation. However, again, I think Marvel will continue to have Gaia just serve as a Skrull leader and work to fix the attack on Skrulls that Ritson executed on Earth, which we'll never see again. She'll disappear just like Harry Styles for maybe like 10 years. Since I've noted that Marvel likes to run it back with their heroes or events throughout their future projects, and it looks like Sam Wilson's Avengers teams will be more in action after Doomsday and Secret Wars, because it really just depends on who goes in unless it's everyone. There's still a future where we're getting Vision Quest, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Wonder Man, Ironheart, and we could say Blade if we really want to. I'm gonna say Blade, but I don't think we're gonna get Blade. Rumors have speculated that Riri Williams be on the new version of the Young Avengers, Marvel's Champions, and Nexus Point News has reported that the writer for Shrinking and Fresh Off the Boat is reportedly writing the series, though none of those alleged to be on that team were featured in the Doomsday chairs.
Champions? Are you fucking serious? Are you serious? Just call it Young Avengers, bro. Just call it Young. You know what?
They could eventually be on chairs in round 2. If they just begun development though, it might just be released after Secret Wars, but the events of Secret Wars could still impact them and what they're doing in the show. And there's always people saying Spider-Man and mentioning Spider-Man, still seeing as Spider-Man has such a prominent part in Infinity War and Endgame, mainly in heartbreaking scenes. It feels like Spider-Man will now become a solo hero, occasionally helping and teaming up with heroes when in need. He's also at the age to be a mentor. We're always seeing him have a mentor in his movies and shows, and I think it's time for him to start teaching. I think with the Fantastic Four coming, this is a perfect opportunity to link him up with the Fantastic Four rather than just join another version of the Avengers. I will also add the Avengers will be on beck and call constantly, and Spider-Man needs to stay in New York and fuck up Fisk with Daredevil. Speaking of Fisk and fucking up New York, you know what we're talking about New York City and Fisk on? We're talking about it on the Sneak Peek, our weekly podcast discussion series. And you can watch clips of that show over on our New Rockstars Highlights channel. And if you don't have time to watch full episodes of Sneak Peek, why not catch some of the best clips by subscribing to the New Rockstars Highlights? Wonder Man series is also coming sooner than we think, and Eric and I discussed on the Sneak Peek the idea of the West Coast Avengers getting their own come up, seeing as so many heroes now live in California. And I think realistically, this would be a brilliant idea, seeing as there's no Avengers campus anymore. And I assume with the calls having to come regional, if Falcon and Sam can't get to DC or New York or LA quick enough, they'd call the people that are on the West Coast. I don't know if Wonder Man is going to be officially on the Avengers team since we haven't even met him yet, but I could see the bridging in Doomsday if it were to happen. And as for Blade and White Vision, Blade's just not coming. If he does, they'll keep him bonded with Moon Knight and Dane Whitman. He is not coming and he's not joining Sam Wilson's team. Marvel exec Brad Winderbaum did talk about Vision Quest though. He said that with the Agatha series is a part 2 of a trilogy with WandaVision and a trilogy that will end with Vision Quest, and that series will follow White Vision and Ultron. But I also just assumed that it would be Billy's search for Tommy. So I don't think that Vision will be on the Avengers team. He'll be working like an independent contractor like I suggested Spidey will. If they go the route of Vision making his own family, which I really doubt they will do, but if they did, we might see Viv, his daughter, who will be completely linked to Marvel Champions like she was in the comics. There are so many characters, so many new team-ups that are coming to the MCU. We've got the new Avengers, the normal old Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men, maybe Marvel Champions. Honestly, too many teams. So many teams. I hope that Sam's team introduces
Hey man, they're gonna need those teams for Doom, bro.
Marvel wants to take
they're
this.
gonna need those teams for Doom, bro. They're gonna need this whole fucking army right here. They're gonna need this whole fucking army against Doom, bro. This is what Doom's gonna have to fight against, bro.
Insane. They have to have their disadvantages because I feel like they have to be somewhat.
Like, come on now. Like, You can't fight Doom with just these motherfuckers. Like, what the fuck?
Thunderbolts. But you let me know what you think of Sam's new
You gotta
team.
fight
Who
them
do
with
you think
all.
is on it? Do you think they're gonna fight the Thunderbolts? And if they do, what matchup
it's
matches
all.
Ghost with who? Who matches with Wyatt Russell? Who matches with the Red Guardian? You let me know in the comments below. And a special thank you to one of our YouTube members, Frederick Price, who supports us at the executive producer level at New Rockstars. And follow me at Lulu_Clemens. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.
Damn, bro. Let's see. Well, I guess I'm gonna talk about my review on Thunderbolts. I seen the movie. Well, I was watching it in the car right now, so that's second time. Well, you know, I might as well finish watching it after I finish live streaming. But yeah, man. Here's how I feel about it. I feel like there's some parts where I feel like they took away scenes that they should have kept in, that they should have added. I also feel that maybe not the story was going not too fast, but at some point in the film, I was like, man, it's kind of getting a little bit. It kind of feels like it's kind of getting long, like stretching it out a little bit. With that being said, Thunderbolts, I give it a 4 out of 5. The acting was good. The story of it actually made me cry, tear up a little bit. So, you know, I feel like when people say that this reminds me of an old Marvel, like feeling like phase 1, phase 2 of Marvel. To be honest, it doesn't really feel like that to me. It feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's like phase 5 still, or like phase 6. It feels like they're putting together this movie that has all these references to all these other movies, and what I'm talking about is the characters. So like, what I'm saying is, you would have to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, you would have to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you would have to watch Black Widow, like, just to watch, like, you know, just to know who all these people are, right? And it doesn't really explain to you the characters that well, to be honest. It just, it does, but, like, it doesn't, like, show you their backstory to a consent on, like, we already know Bucky's backstory, because that's been in, you know, he's been in phase 2, phase 3, phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We already know his backstory. We don't know the backstory completely of, you know, John Walker. We've seen clips of him, you know, we've seen clips of him on other projects of Yelena and Ghost, and you know, some kind of backstory on Red Guardian, but we haven't. They don't really show. They don't really like give you as much details on their backstory as I would want, as I would have want them to do. Now, this is just my opinion and my opinion alone, man. If you guys have the same opinion as me, that's cool. You know, if you guys don't, that's also cool. So, with that being said, man, I think we're gonna take one more rip out of these carts, and I think we're gonna get off this live stream. But yeah, man. I might play some Resident Evil today, or if not, let me know in the comments, or let me know if y'all would want me to play Marvel Rivals. I've seen people play that. I just looked at the gameplay of it. I'm just like, I don't know if I would want to play this, bro. But hey, man, I would only play it if you guys would, watch me play it. You know what I mean? But anyways, man, let's take a rip and yeah, man, let's get off this live stream. Woo! By the way, I'm gonna record like 4 videos too, so there's gonna be 4 videos, and also I'm gonna be I already recorded like a lot of episodes of One Piece, so expect One Piece reactions, One Piece episode reactions. I already recorded like 2 movies, so expect movie reactions, and I already recorded my reaction to season 3 of Invincible, and I'm already watching The Last of Us season 2, so I'm doing that. By the way, I'm not gonna have a Patreon. I'm not gonna do all that shit because literally, bro, I would rather watch my full reaction on YouTube, like fully, and have people watch that shit and not have to like pay me $5 to $10 just to watch my reaction. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, sometimes reactions are cool, but like, sometimes you're just gonna watch a dude just go like this. Oh. But anyways, that's basically it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you're paying $5 to $10 for. You know what I mean? Like, if you pay Patreons this shit, bro, I'm just like, bro. Like, I like watching reaction videos, but I'm not gonna fucking pay you $5 to $10 to watch you watch a fucking movie. When in reality they have a timestamp code, and it's like it's illegal. It's illegal to like pay to like watch a full length movie. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like recording somebody. It's like recording a movie in the theater and then like reacting to that shit, like to the full length thing. It's illegal, right? Like I don't understand. And people fucking get paid. Like people pay money. Like they're like, hey man, I would react to this. I would do this illegal thing, but you have to pay me $5 to $10. Like what the fuck? Like nah, bro. Look, I'm saying I'm not even doing anything illegal. I'm saying I'm putting the timestamp code on the side right here while I'm watching the movie. I'm not gonna put the fucking movie on the screen. Like that's fucking stupid. That's the type of shit that gets you fucked up, and that's the type of shit that's like, why would you? That's the type of shit that gets you sued. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say, bro. I don't want to get fucking sued for shit. So that's why I'd rather just, put it on YouTube, put like, timestamp code, and then put like, edited version where like it's like my highlighted, the highlighted stuff, like the highlighted clips of like my reaction, like my most reacted stuff. That's what I would do. Like the parts I reacted to the most or talked a lot during the movie too.
You want hamburger?
Does it have cheese?
I can put cheese.
Okay. Hey mom, can you smash it? Can you smash the bread? I did. Thank you. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'm gonna actually watch some One Piece later today. I'm actually gonna film a short, YouTube short today too, and it's gonna be a review on this One Piece soda. By the way, I didn't even know they made fucking sodas, bro. I did not even know that. So this is surprising me, cause I think I knew that they made like Naruto, or no, not Naruto. They made Dragon Ball sodas, I think, or like they made Dragon Ball stuff. So it's just this right here is just blowing my fucking mind, dude. I don't even know how. Like my sister's boyfriend gave this shit to me, bro. Like I don't even know how the fuck how they fucking got this shit, bro. What the fuck? But yeah, expect new videos and expect schedule, okay? On filming YouTube videos. Like, basically, I'll put that in another video. That's gonna be in another video. Y'all, man, I'm procrastinating right now. Let's get into this.